What was banned at your school and why? Titty twisters. A weird dude in my class got a lot of laughs by letting people give him titty twisters. Apparently, after repeated and increasingly hard titty twisters, the connective tissue behind his nipple broke. So this guy could literally stretch his nipple 5 to 6 inches off his chest point. Obviously, being a teenager and a weird one at that, he went around showing everyone and their mother his new ability. He got warned about it several times and the final straw was when he was seen by the administration with an equally weird girl sucking his nipple 5 to 6 inches off his chest point. They immediately banned titty twisters. But there was really no need. We were all pretty scarred by what we had seen from this kid. Edit. I can't believe I'm about to do this. But for those of you asking what this looked like, the best I can describe it would be an upside down funnel. When he would pull on the nipple, all the loose skin surrounding it would come off of his chest and a sort of cone shaped base would comprise the first 3-ish inches and the rest did pretty much look like dick nipples. Lol. It was probably a decent 3 to 4 inch diameter circle around his nipple of broken connective tissue, so I promise you, it came off his chest a solid 5 to 6 inches. Over 3 sports seasons during 3 years of high school. I can also tell you that it got to that point progressively. He was literally tugging on that nip in the locker room every day, stretching it out. But who am I to judge, I guess? You could only kind of tell that it was faked up before he would pull on it. I'm not sure if that would eventually repair itself or just start to sag in the grossest way possible as he gets older. I hope you're happy now, Reddit. I'm going to have PTSD nightmares tonight. In elementary school, normal recess was banned because kids were basically beating the shit out of each other under the guise of games like Kill the Carrier. So the school decided to replace recess with structured recess, where you had set activities to choose from that certain teachers oversaw. Obviously this went over like a sack of bricks and kids were pissed. This one 4th grader got their dad to use his printer to make shirts that said free recess in big black letter. We all planned to wear them on the same day and start a child protest point on that very same day. However, one of my best friends told the class spaz, who later in life once stabbed a man several times for comparing him/his pregnant girlfriend to Shrek, the big class rumor, which was that this one kid kissed this girl in our class. Crazy sheet, right? But he went out at the beginning of recess and ran around in circles screaming this rumor at the top of his lungs. This is at the same time that a bunch of smaller elementary school kids are walking around chanting no structured recess in matching shirts. Eventually this super athletic kid who would go on to be a D1 sprinter catches up to the spaz and they start fighting. The spaz lifts up the track guy's shirt part way in the fight and the track kid takes it off. The track guy even then somehow had actual musculature. The spaz feels threatened by this and takes his shirt off, but he's just flabby and bouncy. So now we have 2 shirtless 5th graders throwing punches in the middle of a protest full of little kids. At this point the teachers moved to break it up, but they underestimated the power of crowds and the panic that teachers can cause. So everyone faking just scatters and runs in every direction. I saw kids run right off of school grounds and I even saw one kid jump behind a dumpster. As the teachers try to part this sea of tiny children, the 3rd grade teacher makes a move to grab this kid. In response, some random kid, to this day I still don't know who it was, just faking nails him in the balls. So at this point we've got 2 5th grades wildly flailing at each other, 1 teacher down, and 50 plus children sprinting off in different directions. It took around 3 hours to reimpose order. Structured recess didn't last much longer after that. Anime in general. In my school there were some Christian teachers and they consider anime diabolical. Sailor Moon, Ranma, DBZ, Pokemon, especially this. Some context. In Mexico on national TV or open TV, Channel 5 was slashes for kids. And in the 90s they brought anime in regular basis. Channel 7 tried too. So since 1 PM until 8 PM, if I recall correctly. You can watch DBZ, Pokemon, Ranma, Digimon, Sailor Moon, Saint Seiya, Dragon Quest, Remy, Candy, Sandy Bell, Mazinger Z, The Vision of Escaflowne. They even get us with a psychologist to talk to us individually, to persuade us to not watch those shows. Pokemon was the enemy. They consider it highly Satan related. Point as in any normal school in my country outside, at the end of the day there were one or two small entrepreneurs selling Pokemon cards or DBZ stuff. The school make them remove many times because they were selling Satan stuff. And they make a commitment letter pasted on the play yard to everybody sign it, for everyone should stop watching anime. I didn't, so the psychologist talked with me 3 times. They call my mother, and she sent them to La Chingada. She gathered some other moms and fought back. The moms won, because they really know what the cartoons were about, and the teachers don't. The only one they consider inappropriate was Ranma. Some moms were concerned about a dude changing into a girl with water, and the old guy stealing female undergarments. Point the violence in DBZ or Saint Seiya was okay though, lol. What wasn't banned at my school? First, it started with Magic, the Gathering in our elementary school. Then the entire district banned it. Then they cancelled Earth Day programs after that. Any kind of magic theme became suspect. Point what happened? We had a class of special needs students in our school, called the Star Class, and one semester the teachers thought it would brighten their schedule to teach the star students some magic tricks. Idea was that they'd learn how to do tricks, learn some self-study skills, and put on a magic show at the end of the year. They put up banners in the hallway to promote their progress. Halfway through the program, the banners disappeared. Point turns out there was a very Christian family with kids in our public school. They had written the board with concerns over occultism being condoned by the school, as evidenced by MTG and the Star Class Magic program. They were threatening to sue the school district over a breach of separation of church and state. A hyper-evangelical newspaper from Kansas wrote about how our town was possessed with sin, and even our street signage surely pointed the way to hell. Point the real story. Their kids were little sheets. The son wanted to play Magic the Gathering with the other kids in school, but his parents disallowed him. He was so jealous that he couldn't play. He got his parents to sue the district. They forced the school to cancel Earth Day because it was rooted in pagan rituals. Magic of all forms was banned from the entire district, and even 5 years later we were kicked out of the library for playing Magic the Gathering / tabletop games after school. Point here's some source. TLDR, religious zealots from out of county sue local school due to Satanism. Cancel the special needs kids magic show. In 2000, right out of college, I taught at a little private Christian school. When I say little I mean it was K-8 with 8 kids in the 8th grade. Point there was a school uniform, but Fridays were dress down day, which still had a dress code, but not actual uniforms. It wasn't as strict as many Christian schools I've heard about, but it was more strict than I was used to. Point one of the 8th graders was this gothy girl. Let's call her Amy. Amy loved to push the limits of the dress code every dress down Friday, and it resulted in numerous new rules just because of Amy. No joke, they would reprint the rule book, or at least print and distribute addenda everyone was supposed to insert in their rule book until new ones could be printed. Being a kind of fundy Christian school, the administration didn't take too kindly to the goth, aka the devil, style. Amy would come in with black fishnet pantyhose. There's nothing in the dress code against fishnet pantyhose. New rule, no fishnet pantyhose. Point then instead of pantyhose she'd kick it up a notch with fishnet stockings / thigh highs. Thigh highs aren't pantyhose. I broke no rule. New rule, no fishnet pantyhose, stockings, thigh highs, etc. Point the next week she'd come in with gothy makeup, black lipstick, black eyeliner, the works. There's nothing in the dress code against black makeup. New rule, no black lipstick or eyeliner. The next week it was black nail polish. New rule, no black nail polish. Point with each dress down day she never, to my recollection, actually had any disciplinary action taken against her. They just kept confronting her. She'd point out that she hasn't violated the dress code. They'd back down and rewriting the rules. She kept finding loophole after loophole, like it was a weekly sport for her. My favorite was toward the end of the school year she got her mother to sew her a cape. Not a superhero cape, but a black on the outside, red velvet on the inside Dracula style cape. Between classes she'd hold it out in front of her like Bela Lugosi as she made her way down the hall. The others I kinda smirked, but when I saw her coming down the hall with her cape I couldn't help busting up laughing. When confronted about it her response was, of course, there's nothing in the dress code against capes. New rule, no capes. This will probably be buried, but ah well. They banged messing with the cupboard in roommate. Class roommate had an old, very heavy cupboard in one corner. It was also bolted to the wall and the floor for good measure. Also someone enterprising had weighted it with a metal. I have no other word than block for it. In the bottom of the cupboard, that must have weighed at least 500 pounds. That cupboard would have required a forklift to get it out of the room. It was going nowhere. But nobody was using it. It was completely empty. Apart from the metal block obviously. Justin loved playing tricks on teachers with that cupboard. Some of his tricks: put a phone in it with a ringtone of an ambulance rushing by. Called it like 10 times in one class. Everyone looked out of the window, as if actually watching an ambulance rush by. Teacher got really annoyed. Hid in the cupboard before class intending to come out when the teacher was doing attendance. Teacher forgot attendance. Justin spent the entire class, and it was a double class, inside the cupboard, only to come out when the school bell rang with a loud faking finally. I got a bit cramped in there. After the spring holidays, all chairs and tables had been removed from this classroom as they waxed the floor. One of the chairs was put on top of this cupboard. Justin grabbed a table, put a chair on it, and used that as a sort of stairs to get on the cupboard, to sit on the chair. Resulted in a shouting match between him and the maths teacher. Get down now, Justin. But sir, there's a chair here. Aren't chairs meant to be sat on? I said get down. Rigged. The doors with one of those fake cardboard gun-like things that shoot glitters. We call them poppers. Not sure what they're called in English. Wire attached to one door, popper to the other. The doors had to be opened with a bit of force. They were a bit stuck. So whoever opened the doors next got rained on with glitter, kept throwing bouncing balls at the metal side. When the teacher was turned away, it made a satisfying sound I would describe as clang. Hit a glass of milk in it. Like I said, nobody used it, so it was like a stink bomb that slowly developed naturally. Eventually the administration made it known that anyone messing with the cupboard in classroom 8 would receive a punishment that will be twice as harsh as punishment usually handed out to people making similar mischief. Justin moved onto the light projector, similar to this one, in room 13A. His grand trick was when he projected a giant penis onto the ceiling and none of the teachers noticed for an entire day. In retrospect, Justin was a bit of a dick. Funny guy though. No class was allowed to hold LAN parties. To add to it, the way my class and several older classes were paying for a school trip for the last year in middle school was by holding LAN parties and charging what equates to $10 admission. We'd have about 50 to 60 kids at any one LAN. Doesn't sound like much, I know, but the school was small, only had 150 to 160 kids studying there. There'd been a running deal that we could use the school assembly room and their internet for free. In exchange we had to pay for our own gear. We'd bought all the gear and had been doing it for a year. Never had a single issue. No underage drinking, no fighting, nothing. It's pretty much the only thing in town where nothing bad ever happened. Parents could visit at any time for free. We sold cheap food and drinks. All was good. Sadly, a couple kids were using the "I'm just going to the LAN" excuse to go out and party all weekend. The parents complained to the school, who did the only reasonable thing, broke the deal, and stopped us from holding any more LANs. Then they heard that we were talking with town hall about renting a hall from them, so school officials talked to town hall and made sure we couldn't do that. Then they banned any class from holding LAN parties to raise money. Results were very successful. Not a single kid used "I'm going to the LAN" as an excuse to get away from their parents to go out drinking. I mean, the kids still went out drinking, and all the kids who no longer had a LAN to go to still went out drinking. But at least nobody told their parents they were playing computer games, which is the important part. Cards of all sorts. Pokemon cards, of course, but none of us cool kids would be caught dead playing that shit. Magic: the Gathering was banned for a variety of ever-changing reasons. Ultimately it was banned because students were using it to have fun, and obviously that is not allowed in school. First they banned it because some parents thought it was gambling, until we pointed out that none of us were dumb enough to play for ante. This involved explaining to retarded PTA members what the hell ante was. Then it was banned because of all the thefts of cards that we pointed out were not actually occurring. After that it was banned for religious sensitivity reasons, because some particularly shrill soccer moms were convinced it was satanic. I used to have an old beta unholy strength card, and I think I still know where it is. It was the old one, the one that still had the flaming pentagram thing in the background, before they airbrushed it out in revised. I used to keep it in the corner of one of my notebooks, so I could pull it out and brandish it at screechy fundamentalist types, like you'd brandish a crucifix at a vampire. Hiss. Eventually Pokemon came out and attracted all the attention. It was gambling, of course. And then it was promoting cruelty to fictional animals, and ultimately it was verboten, because it was some weird Japanese thing. So obviously it was all pornographic anyway. By that point I was in high school and all the magic nerds were old enough that we could just fack off to a Denny's or the comic book store or something and play cards there where nobody would bother us. Unnatural hair colors, distracting. Piercings anywhere but the ears, unless a parent wrote a note saying the piercing was to honor a religious tradition, or that it had cultural significance. My friend's mom did this for a tongue ring. LMFAO, tank tops/sleeveless tops for both genders. In Florida where it's 100 degrees, pajama pants, sweatpants, or anything else deemed loungewear. Juicy couture tracksuits, because they had juicy written across the bum. Honestly I think this was more about the velour tracksuits than the juicy on the bum. No headphone using devices. No CD players, MP3 players, etc. They were even banned on the bus. Mine got stolen from my locker and I couldn't even report it, because I would have gotten in trouble for bringing it in the first place. Water bottles because kids started bringing vodka to school in them. Wallet chains because they were gang related. Any kind of backless sandal or backless sneaker. Once again, South Florida. Doesn't really make sense to ban this because they were a safety hazard. Fake hair. Literally, fake hair. I had a scrunchie with fake hair around it to make it look like my hair was wrapped in my own hair, and I had to get rid of it. I still don't know why. Safety pins. A lot of kids in those days had them as accessories, but my school classified them as a weapon. Any kind of fake razor blade earrings or little necklaces with cartoon guns or anything like that. Basically all jewelry from Hot Topic. Pants with wide leg openings like Junko, Kikwa and Trip. They were also considered to be dangerous and could be hiding scary stuff. Tattoos, but that's a given. Even temporary tattoos, though. Fake eyelashes. Fake nails if they were deemed too distracting. Girls. Dancing with girls at school dances. This was my fault. Girls and guys could grind on each other all night, but two girls slow dance together and everybody loses their mind. I'll try to think of more. This was in Naples, Florida. Our primary grade tried to get so many things banned from school. Pogs got banned after some fights. Marbles got banned after because they kept on falling out of our desks. Tennis balls. We would play suicide. Throw the ball on the wall while it bounced. If someone caught it, they can whip it on you. If they failed the catch, someone else can pick it up and whip it on either of us. People left school with bruises and whatnot. Having anything on our desk except for textbook, one pencil, 1 to 2 pence, blue/black. Pencil cases were not allowed. Calculators were okay. A bunch of us would take empty scotch tape ring and tape it to a pencil to make a basketball hoop. Other people would throw tissue ball across the room trying to get into another person's hoop. Straw and tissue, because people would spit tissue through the straws. Glue sticks, we would throw them on the ceiling and hope it got stuck. Teacher didn't notice until one day, 5 of them fell off the ceiling making noise. That was the end of that. Example of it: one of the winters, our grade got banned from going out during recess. At the time, everyone was making snow forts and our grade for whatever reason was let out early during recess. Some of us went around and destroyed other people's snow fort. We weren't allowed to go out for a while, let alone make a fort afterwards. And lastly, the entire 5H grade got banned from music class and the end of the year school show because one day, we had a substitute teacher. The principal walked in to see our show progress, but we diced around. She got mad that we weren't listening to the sub, so removed us from having music class for grade 5 and 6 and banned us from the show. Fun times. XD. will be buried, but my school banned Takis and hot fries. Okay, so I went to a very income mixed school. 75% of the school was on food stamps and another 25 are from the richest parts of the city for its magnet program. Anyways, the poor kids like their Takis and hot fries, and would usually get it themselves. Rich kids wanted to fit in, and got addicted to, but didn't want to risk missing the bus by crossing the street to 7/11. Me being me exploited the opportunity, and offered to do deliveries for 25% extra. I was making good money one day. Principal caught me and started patrolling the place between the buses and the store. Confiscated food. I recruited 5 or 6 people who worked with me to rush the food to their people on their bus. There was a ton of buses, so lots of place to run through. Usually principal caught one guy a week, but we managed to crank out very decent profits, which I solid with the delivery guy 50 to 50. So, the school unable to keep up, banned hot fries and Takis altogether. I don't know how much I made, because I spent most of my earnings at 7/117/11 was the real winner. Edit. My phone typing lag made sure I couldn't read what I was typing. Just realized this comment was unreadable. Sedevita. Sedevita is a soft drink that is sold in powder form and mixed with water that's popular in the Balkans, especially among children. In our elementary school cafeteria, they sold very few items. Our meals were prepaid, so the cafeteria was mostly for handing those out, but among these items were plastic cups of Sedevita. We all loved it and bought it, until one day it was declared unhealthy, and I'm not sure by whom. To be fair, I've heard that it's right up there with Coca-Cola on that regard. But you can understand that we were furious. The story isn't really about how and why it was banned, but about what followed. My friend and I decided we were going to take Sedevita from home, mix it with water in plastic bottles in the school bathroom, and sell them in the cafeteria for the same price. And for a day, we were fighting for the Sedevita cause, while making serious bank, for elementary school standards. Enter a classmate who we'll call Idiot. During that day, we had our equivalent of English and the topic was journalism, the writing style that reporters used to tell us the news. Our homework was to make a news article. And surely enough, Idiot showed up the next day and handed in his homework, which was basically an informant report detailing our Sedevita bootlegging scheme. The teacher called my friend and me out in front of the whole class and forbade us to continue with the endeavor. I can't remember what Idiot's motive was. He could have wanted to tell on us in a really weird way, but I seem to remember him not really realizing what he did wrong. Whichever it is, Idiot deserves his name. Several things over the years. Back in middle school, it was popular to roll your pant legs around your ankles really tight. This was outlawed because some kid rolled his prescription medication in his pant leg, and they thought it would lead to kids hiding drugs in their old pants pocket. Gym shoes were also moderately popular. Gym shoes with a little pocket. Same thing. Drugs. I think the shoes were called kangaroos. All forms of the Simpsons paraphernalia. Because Bart openly said he's proud of being an underachiever and they didn't want that kind of negativity in the school. Clicker pens. 1 or 2 teachers went on a crusade to end clicker pens. They were eventually outlawed. Spiral notebooks. Same too, as whole teachers didn't like the little shreds of paper on their floors when kids would tear out a page. Outlawed. Loose batteries. Some kid attached wires to a battery and left it under a teacher's chair cushion. It set on fire when it got too hot. No more loose batteries, as if anyone ever really carried loose batteries around. Hank Williams t-shirts. This was not mine, but from a friend who lives in Hannibal, Missouri. The shirts all have Hank on them with a Confederate flag and a picture of Hank Williams, a country singer. Schools said that students were wearing these and claiming that Hank was an acronym for Hannibal against nigger kids. So, these hillbilly kids couldn't wear shirts of their favorite has-been country artist. I'm sure there were more, but I can't think of any right now. UGR and Pokemon cards. Because trading cards are considered gambling, Tamagotchis or any kind of virtual pet things. Because kids need to focus on their work rather than cleaning up virtual pup. Beyblades. Because someone could cut themselves on a spinning top. Bedman. Because someone could launch a marble with that, and if we aimed it at a person they would lose their eye. Physical contact of any kind. This includes tag and high fives, Pecan, because they saw the fact it had cards and automatically assumed gambling. Cell phones, because they didn't want kids on them in class. Gamma boys, because kids should enjoy the outside and not be stuck to a screen. Side note, we also didn't have any playground equipment aside from a tetherball pole which had the tetherball taken off because the rope could wrap around someone's neck and choke them. Picking up snow was banned because people could get hurt if I saw rocks are accidentally packed in it. Playing with sticks because they could be used as a weapon. This is a prime example of turning children into giant pussies. Not to mention with nothing to really do, the school became a toxic environment where people would sit around and talk shit about people all day. Trading cards. Specifically match attacks. Any British 2000s kid will remember those motherfuckers. They were trading cards based around football/soccer, and they were like drugs. Every kid, or at least the boys, had them, and they changed every season. So there is a certain set of cards for the 2008-09 season, another for 2009-10. The best ones were called 100 clubs, which were cards that had 100 attack and defense score. It was a battling game. You were supposed to battle the cards, but nobody did. But they were incredibly rare. In the 2007-08 season, I remember I bought some 100 clubs online to impress my friends. Anyway, they were banned about 2 or 3 years after we became obsessed. The reason being, someone was going into the corridor where the bags were kept at break times and stealing the best cards from people's bags. This happened excessively, so much so that the teachers had only one option: to ban cards, not just match attacks, but other trading cards, such as their rival, which I think was called Super Strikes, UGIO, and Pokemon. Altogether, the teachers could never catch the perpetrator, or knew if it was one or several that were working together. But I knew, because it was me who stole the cards. I still have them. I could probably sell them when I'm 40 for quite a bit of money, as relics of an age gone by. Like 50s stuff is today, point that it will have all been worth it. It's funny, I'm still friends with some of the people I stole from. They will never know. I will not tell my potential wife, nor my potential children. If I take a secret with me to the grave, it will be this one. Book bags and Halloween. For the Halloween thing, some horrible racist kid dressed up in white sheets like a KKK member, and after that every year following we didn't have Halloween, we just had Decade Day where you dressed up in garb from your historical decade of choice. Despite my school being named after the Civil War, no one seemed to think about dressing up like a Confederate soldier. With the book bags at the tail end of my junior year of high school, 2000. 3 kids brought guns to school, all drug dealers claiming they needed it. If a rival dealer started some shit, none intended to do harm towards students, so to speak. Over the period of a month, the entire school district banned book bags. Started off with the rule that we could bring mesh or transparent bags, but that was eventually squashed, so we couldn't bring any book bags. At first, girls were allowed to bring purses under the stipulation that they were not allowed to have a purse large enough to carry a textbook, because then it became a book bag. The logic being teenage girls needed makeup and tampons, and so they should be allowed. Several guys in my class thought this was sexist bullshit and started carrying their mother's purses around to carry pencils and pens and other school supplies. For a bit we tried to carry books wrapped up in a belt, like you see in old comics and movies from the 40s and 50s, but someone decided the belts could be too easily used as weapons after some kid whipped another kid with their book belt, so belts were only allowed if you were wearing it. Like a belt on your pants was okay, but if you had like a spare belt in your locket, that was a big no-no. So after the men carrying purses protest and belt show, it basically left us with carrying a stack of books and notebooks and pencils and pens home every day. You went from carrying most of your books from the day to going to your locket between every class. In 5th grade, my friends and I thought that making tiny weapons out of paper clips would be great fun. So that's what we did, and we never got caught. Until one day, there were reports of other students in other classrooms getting caught with these mini weapons. From then on it was high alert from the teachers, but no worries, we started the trend and we weren't about to let a couple of amateurs ruin the fun. So we kept at it, and we kept making them like the little sly ne'er-do-wells that we were. Here and there some of our comrades did get caught, RIP to our court brothers, but for the most part all went along smoothly. However, one of us, not me, got in over his head. If you've ever seen the movie Chronicle, then you know what I mean. He made weapon after weapon after weapon, no longer sticking by the strict rules of size or brutality, until one fateful morning, our entire world of paperclip weaponry came crashing down. The teacher saw him playing with one of his more mediocre pieces. She called the principal, who promptly came down. He searched inside his desk and lo and behold, the kid had an anvil that the US military would be proud of. Swords, mace balls, and a load of medieval type weapons covered his desk, all made of paper clips. The principal then looked to the class and broke down into tears. Just kidding. He said, if anyone here has any of these paperclip weapons, take them out now, because if you don't, and I find them, you will be suspended. We all looked at each other, knowing this was the end, and pulled out our weapons, placing them on our desks. Only 2 kids, class was 23 or 24, didn't have weapons. From that day on, creativity, in the form of paperclip weapons, was banned from our school. Elementary school, slap bracelets were banned, because one student scratched their arm on the exposed metal insert. Didn't break skin, just a visible scratch. Parents flipped out and demanded the school take action. Junior high, sunglasses were banned from being worn indoors, because one teacher felt they would be used to conceal bloodshot eyes after getting stoned. None of us wore our sunglasses indoors anyway, but we felt it was a stupid rule nonetheless. The student body effectively lobbied to get the rule expunged, when the same teacher was seen wearing her sunglasses indoors on several occasions. High school, trench coats were banned following Columbine, citing the coat's ability to conceal weaponry. Meanwhile, the school's known gang members were allowed to continue wearing their thick puffy coats, which were actually used to conceal weaponry, on the basis of it being part of their culture. Any kind of headwear was also banned, with the exception of headwear that had religious significance. Everyone just started claiming their hats, scarves, headbands, etc. had religious significance. The school administration didn't raise a fuss, because they didn't want to risk a lawsuit for calling anyone's religious beliefs into question. The Gay/Straight Alliance Club was banned for a while, resulting in regular protests and walkouts. This was around the time of the Matthew Shepard murder. School administration was concerned that, if gay students came out, they ran the risk of harassment, violence, or worse. In hindsight, it was a very legitimate concern, but at the time the students, myself included, interpreted the move as oppressive and discriminatory. And there was the added issue of having a public school openly endorsing homosexual behavior. It's been nearly 20 years since then, but even today I would imagine that would still ruffle plenty of jimmies. There was some kind of soda ban at my school, but the enforcement was iffy. The rules were you weren't supposed to have any kind of soda on school grounds during school hours. This meant you couldn't even bring one from home. They backed this up by disabling the soda machines during school hours, except for the one in our locker room. I had no clue why there was a soda machine in the locker room, but it was there, and everyone used it. NJROTC had a soda mess in its office where students enrolled and had ROTC on their schedule that semester. Our school did 4x4 block schedule, switching each semester. Could head into the office, deposit 50 cents in the can and grab a soda from the fridge. Now, the reason sodas were banned were the obvious health reasons. But, for some reason, the ban did not include students in ROTC. It was actually, in my book, a little unfair that school administration would specifically exempt kids from this, but some members of staff were former military and felt ROTC kids deserved special treatment since they were vested in the military lifestyle. The only time the ban stood a chance of getting really enforced was Thursdays, when ROTC students had to wear uniforms, and it was easy for staff to figure out who was ROTC or not. But, it did kind of get to a point that they didn't bother at all. The ban existed on paper, but not in practice. A lot of parents complained the school was taking too much control over the child's life outside of school. It's already bad enough that something you did over the weekend could land you in trouble at school. There were cases of kids getting in fights entirely outside of school. only to return Monday, and by the end of the day get handed a suspension for it. I've heard it's gotten to the point they find out all the students' social media accounts and monitor them, and will suspend them over stuff that's not even school related. Schools are not educating kids, they're just institutionalizing them, and getting them used to a police state. Oh man, I'm a bit late to the party, but a series of terrible decisions lead to my high school banning rock paper scissors. You see, it was generally a very nice school, but there was one week where for some reason everyone decided to solve their problems with fist fights. It was a rare occurrence to make it from one class to the next without being blocked by a crowd of people chanting fight around two idiots duking it out. To make light of the situation, 2 students got a huge group to stand around them and chant while they dramatically played rock paper scissors. For this, they were suspended. Now, the reasoning behind this wasn't that bad. They blocked the hallways, created a ruckus, etc. But some people thought it was a bit harsh, so another student decided to hold a protest where on a certain day, everyone would just play rock paper scissors. However, as the day approached, everyone started to cool off, and she realized it wasn't that big of a deal. She called off the protest and told the administrators that there might be some rebellious but non-disruptive hand-based gameplay going on. For this, she was suspended. This got all the people who had just lost interest in the ordeal to get pissed again, so the RPS protest happened, and they had to ban the game of rock paper scissors. There were a bunch of similar episodes that I can remember, all of them caused by a complete lack of understanding about teenage psychology, but this one sticks out to me as the craziest. Males dressing in female attire. So, somewhere in our rule book, or whatever it was called, in the dress code it specified that females could not dress in male clothing. Now I know what you're thinking, what does that even mean? But keep in mind this was like 2004 in rural Georgia. So homecoming was coming up and I, being the prankster that I was back then, decided that I would protest this absurd policy by dressing in drag, since the rules said nothing about males wearing female clothing. On top of that, the girl I took with me dressed in a suit. We were a freaking hit except with the assistant principal and the school cop. So I showed up a little late, because I had no idea what it took for a girl to get ready on such a big night. Misplaced my ticket, and a friend of ours decided he would just go in and let us in through the back. What we didn't bet on was our school cop doing rounds of the building. When he asked me if I needed any help, I responded with a firm no thanks, but without masking my true gender. Whoops. Thankfully, after about 5 minutes of berating from the cop and assistant principal, the same male friend came back out, saw I was in deep shit, and without a second thought, threw his arms around me, kissed me on the cheek, and said, "Oh honey, there you are." Immediately the authority figures awkwardly backed off, and I had a faking great night rocking a half chub in a dress. Fast forward to the following year, and due to disturbances from the previous year, we have amended the school dress code. And that's the mark I left on my high school. TLDR, showed up to homecoming as a white RuPaul, caused enough of a stir to get the dress code changed in my high school. So after getting my master's I went back to my old high school to volunteer for one play, because the stuff I learned there in drama in high school, tech theater stuff, literally helped me pay my way through college. Our director was more strict than most admins of bonded theaters. It was crazy, but we learned a lot. Anyway, I heard they needed help and felt like I owed them. At some point during the production the kids were all in trouble because someone had microwaved a mayo packet in the instructor microwave during senior break. They were going to cancel prom and were talking about throwing all the seniors out of the play. The teachers were also upset and going on and on and on about how, if you did crap like that you weren't ready for college. And I just started laughing, and they looked at me like I was crazy. Let me show you what I learned in college. I proceed to use some plastic fishing line to hang a CD in their stupid microwave, and turned it on, and watched it spin and spark in a circle. They were seriously impressed, no harm done, and we repeated it several times. Kids got their prom and play. I had forgotten just how crazily serious that crap was taken in high school, having just gotten my master's and having taught college for 2 years. Yeah, nobody gives a shit was my catchphrase for a while. College. Attempted to ban Yu-Gi-Oh cards in my elementary school. One girl in my class hated Yu-Gi-Oh and any other form of trading cards, but especially Yu-Gi-Oh, since that's what everyone was playing. She went on a campaign to get it banned, like full on make elementary school great again. Her mom was the teacher, so it worked, and they got banned. But no one gave a shit. We still played every day. I was the leader of the Yu-Gi-Oh kids, so I spearheaded the campaign to keep it around. To spite anti-Yu-Gi-Oh girl, I got her little brother to play. He loved it. Every year the new teacher would ban them, but we still never gave a shit. But anti-Yu-Gi-Oh girl's teacher mom had a personal vendetta against me. Anytime she saw me, she would almost police search me for cards and take them away. I had a case for my deck that clipped to my pants, and one day I accidentally pissed on it, like full on went to town on my cards as I pull the cards out, so my friend and I can see the damage. This faking teacher snatches my piss cards out of my hands. Weird that she came into the boys' bathroom to snatch them. We faking laughed hours off as the piss dripped onto her hand. Such faking karma. The whole thing got really out of hand. There was almost a full-on war between me and my followers of the Heart of the Cards and anti-Yu-Gi-Oh girl and her followers of Boring Sheet. I was pretty sure they were going to go full-on Pokemon Team Plasma and duelist to ban dueling. It ended with graduation, and I like to think I won, as I kept playing it all through elementary school. It wasn't banned at school per se, but rather at country week. So anyway, once a year our school used to head up to the city to compete against other schools in various sports over a week. I'm sure this is common. During that week all the students stay in a hotel, where rooms are assigned to teams, i.e. rooms 1, 2, 3 and 4 are for boys volleyball. When we first get to the accommodation we are given a chance to head to the shops to purchase food for the week. I thought, fuck it, I'll buy some bacon and eggs so that my team can have them for breakfast one morning. The morning that I decided appropriate to cook this delicious meal was the late start day, which allowed everyone a few extra hours of precious sleep. I got up at the usual time, because obviously this kind of breakfast takes time. It doesn't really, but I was naive. I was cooking away blissfully, the sound and smell of cooking bacon waking the other teammates, the fire alarm going off in the hallway waking up the rest of the students, teachers, other tenants who were all. I had forgotten to turn on the extraction fan, and at my current level of cooking ability the bacon was quite smoky, thus setting of the alarms. Everyone got evacuated, and I mean everyone, right out onto the pavement below my room. I could see them standing there groggy-eyed in their pajamas, while I was munching down on delicious bacon and egg sandwich. I knew why the alarms were going off. I didn't need to evacuate, and that's the story of why students are not allowed to cook any food during country week. TLDR, faked up bacon, set off fire alarm. Now students at my old school can't cook food during country week. Primary school, Pokemon got banned because of the kids fighting over it thing. Also I had a brush with the head teacher with Pokemon cards in a guild with association deal because a friend of mine and her friend got caught with them, and because I was nearby at the time I got dragged into it, which included me being accused of having the cards, but he skipped over the person who had them. I remember in one year like toys from home got banned because of toys getting stolen and stuff. Secondary school I ended up in a religious school, so that was more a question of what didn't get banned. We had an incident of gambling because some kids devised a game that involved betting with pennies, so it was the whole "you are gambling" POTC got banned, or at least we all were told off. Because someone brought it to school as they'd borrowed it, and we put it on in our common room, and one of our teachers walked past at the point where bar boss's crew become the zombie pirates for the first time. Bad timing. Also we had a playground being a very small bit of car park. The younger kids would be out there, and the secondary school kids weren't meant to be in there. So we pretty much had nowhere to go at breaks or lunch, so that meant some kids would play football in the hallway, and got in trouble for that. And I think we sort of had the auditorium for the church, but couldn't really do anything in there. And of course that meant creationism was true. What even is seched? If you're a girl you have to wear a skirt and other bits and bobs. Very strict uniform codes, so like no hair dye, no jewelry. We even had regulations for underwear. No long hair on boys. No piercings unless you were a girl. You could have ear studs. If you're a girl with long hair it must be tied up. Also, we were technically banned from using a set of toilets in the building. My school was literally in the church, which was a converted warehouse. The school toilets were upstairs, and then there was a set of toilets downstairs, and we weren't meant to use them for a safeguarding measure, because they could be used by non-school people, because of the fact the church was usually running a Bible school / college there. But no one really listened to that. Tamagotchis, because they were popular and the school didn't want to be seen tolerating fun. School is a place of learning, and not one of enjoyment. Pokemon. Not just the game, but the entire franchise. Pokemon lunch boxes, Pokemon clothing, Pokemon toys. They were having none of it, because it was popular, and they didn't want to be seen as tolerating fun. Gamma Boys and other handhelds, because they were popular, and they didn't want to be seen to be tolerating fun. Anything even remotely resembling a weapon. I remember one boy got suspended for holding a stick which he had found in the school grounds, because he was holding it like a gun. Harry Potter. Again, not just the books, but the entire franchise. Because it was popular and the school didn't want to be seen as tolerating fun. Snowballs were banned in winter. I remember a kid who got suspended for just making one. He didn't even throw it. He just got seen making it. Rollerblades, Spice Girls, and Star Wars. 2. Basically, anything that was popular, anything that was a fad or a craze quickly got banned. I'm not sure exactly why, but I suspect that it was because certain members of the faculty didn't know how to deal with kids having a shared interest which they couldn't easily control or supplant. In hindsight, I can understand the snowball ban, but at the time it just felt like a deliberate attempt to ruin our fun. Similarly, the no weapons, or anything even resembling a weapon ban came shortly after the Dunblane shootings, so that might have had something to do with it. Men. My school banned a lot of things. Darlor's Umbridge must have been on the school board. Dressing up for Halloween. So to start this off, there had been a mini tradition by a group of kids to stage fights on Halloween. Enter my freshman year of high school. I was enjoying a nice simple day in my electronics class, messing around with various circus boards, when I caught wind of a plan by the seniors. They were talking about a show of the century that was going down today. In the class all I hear from them is, Trash Man vs Captain Crunch. I thought nothing of it other than a prank being pulled by the senior class. Boy was I wrong. The bell goes off, and the seniors start booking out down the hallway. I trailed after them to see this so-called amazing show go down. The one senior who dressed up as Ric Flair started screaming down the hall, "Ah, you ready? In this corner we got the Trash Man." Everyone starts going nuts. He continues, "And in this corner we've got Captain Crunch." The cheers at this point is dealing, and that's when it happened. Full unadulterated chaos amongst a portion of high schoolers. Tables were being broken, trash cans went flying, windows were shattered, and the shirts flying off of girls. For 15 minutes this storm of chaos was allowed to run rampant. Eventually the principals and everyone settled it down, but I will always remember my first and only Halloween at my high school. P.S. The trash man ironically had a broken nose from a thrown trash can. TLDR, the seniors staged a fight, caused utter chaos to erupt in the school, and resulted in banning of dressing up for Halloween. I've told this story before, but I'll tell it again here. Single sling laptop messenger bags / satchels and novelty sized pencil bags. My high school was located near a fairly rough neighborhood, but our local news team loved over exaggerating it. A gang related crime in the school neighborhood made my school take safety precautions to prevent potential shooting / stabbings. The school rule book of my high school added the backpack rule, which was to state that all double sling backpacks and purses of any kind must remain in a locker during class hours, which sucked if you couldn't get to your locker in between classes to change books and notes as necessary. This rule change forced a large population of the school to drag entire school days worth of notes and textbooks all damn day. We got sick of this sheet really fast. The girls of our schools got around the rule with huge novelty sized pencil bag that were basically purses. The guys struggled until my friend at the time, who I last checked is currently studying to be a lawyer, figured out a loophole in the school rule that allowed us to carry our textbooks in a single sling laptop messenger bag. Teachers were surprisingly cool with our idea and we were finally able to comfortably carry our textbooks comfortably again. until my school eventually got a grant and used it to get a high-end business level Wi-Fi system with terrible moderation that consisted of one username and one password for everything. We convinced one of our cool teachers to give us the login info. So naturally all of my friends started to bring our laptops to school so we could watch YouTube videos or play WoW in our downtown when the staff weren't around at lunch. The principal and the deans of our school caught onto students abusing their expensive network and changed the password. 2 days later someone in the school would convince a teacher to give it to them. They honestly could care less and slowly share it with the rest of the student body until the principal ordered to change the password again. This eventually became a weekly ritual for the school. The staff finally got around to spending money on an actual moderation system after we graduated. They also updated the backpack rule to include single sling laptop/messenger bags, but added an exception to clear backpacks and purses that you can see through as long the absolutely no electronics whatsoever. Fun times. Handheld fans. I lived in Arizona as a kid. Crazy hot. Kids brought handheld fans to recess for a little relief. Most kids had a little double blade, foam, AA battery version you find at gift shops. My friend let me borrow hers, and a tiny bit of my hair spun around it. I had long hair. I turned it off, unraveled it, and gave it back. Chang thought this was hilarious as sheet. Chang didn't have a cheap foam fan like everyone else. He has this monstrosity of a contraption attached to his hat. 4 hard plastic blades under the bill with a solar panel wired to the top. Guess who stuck that sheet in my hair? So we are walking to the nurse's office as I'm supporting this 5 pounds hat from pulling my hair out, and Chang is keeping his hands on the solar panel to keep it from receiving power like Superman from the Sonoran desert sun. There was no off switch, only darkness. I was about to punch him when he waved to his friend and my scalp felt like it was going take my brain with it. So we arrive at the nurse's office. The nurse is my classmate's mom, the classmate who looks like Shirley Temple and brings in her latest pageant trophy every week for show and tell. Her mom has big fancy Texas hair, so you'd think she'd be a little empathetic to my situation and try to help untangle the mess. Nope. Office scissors. Alright, honey, you're good. Go back to recess now. My hair didn't grow back out until high school. The next morning there was announcement. Lunch is chicken nuggets. Today's weather is 98 degrees, and fans are now banned from school grounds. Drink your water, kids. UGR cards were banned, and I was half of the reason why. Lemme explain. In my second and third years of primary school, when I was 6/7, I was obsessed with UGR. I was similarly obsessed with Digimon and Power Rangers before that, but UGR completely dominated my every thought from those ages up to the end of primary school. And there was one specific type of card I loved more than anything, the elemental heroes. So at some point in P3 a starter deck gets released that I had absolutely no idea about, and one of the people in my class who got it was showing it off. It had most of your standard elemental heroes and a few of the staples, but it also had one card that instantly captivated me, and that card was Bladedge. Goddamn was that thing a sight to behold. Anyone who knows the game knows that most ultra rares look crazy 80% of the time, and Bladedge was no exception. So I had to have it, but so did someone else in my class. We'll call him Kevin, because I still know the guy. As far as I remember, the first exposure I ever had to UGR was from Kevin, back in P2, and as I already stated I was hooked from that point onward. But despite the fact that he got me into the game in the first place, I did not give Kevin the time of day, and we both bid on that card like crazy, coming up with insane offers for the poor owner of Bladedge. Of my memories of the incident are hazy, but I remember how it ended. Me and Kevin standing outside the classroom, bawling our eyes out, as the teacher yelled at us for acting the way we were. That day, UGR was banned from the school, and I never saw a single person play it again. Eventually Pokemon took over, as it tends to, and lots of little things like Go-Go's and match attacks were emerging on the playground. But there was still a sense of emptiness left by the disappearance of UGR in the school. Of course I eventually stopped playing, because 1 no one else touched those cards anywhere at all near where I live, and 2 holy hell were those cards expensive, but I still feel sad that it never really took off. Now, UGR's just an old joke, to me and to Kevin Point, but hey, at least Pokemon's still popular. Things I remember: the fun police banning in grade school. Slap bracelets. We could all be killed by the sliver of metal inside these bracelets. Lollipops. The thought here was that some child somewhere had once fallen during recess and had a lollipop stick pierce his throat. It was the explanation we all received when this edict was put in place. Point pogs/slammers. This was a direct result of fights that broke out to do angry kids who lost games having to go eat their pogs to the winners as per the game rules. This was also back when the Simpsons were huge, and "I'm Bart Simpson, who the hell are you" was a catchphrase that was being put on clothing. This was banned from my grade school along with a lot of other Simpsons paraphernalia. Homer in his underwear, etc. This also applies to anything that had the logo of Beavis and Butthead on it. Point. When I was in middle school, there was a week where TVs, the old extremely expensive portable ones, and radios were banned. It was the end of the O.J. Simpson trial and everyone wanted to listen to what was going on. I personally had a radio confiscated from me the day the verdict was announced. The irony of this is that the principal decided that this was a pretty important cultural moment and allowed all of the classes to watch the verdict be announced on those wheel-out TV/VCR sets we all remember from back in the day. My elementary school was super strict about what you could bring into the school. They had wicked tight security and 15-foot fences with barbed wire lining the top 3 feet. And it was pretty clear that this security was to keep people in, not out. In the 3 weeks following Halloween they would ban all non-nutritious food items, candies, gums, popcorn, etc. So we had to work out a way to eat our halls at school. I was a higher up in a candy mule organization. We were paid $1 per ounce of candy that we put in our ass and deposited into the toilet reservoir. This all started when I was in the 3rd grade. By 5th grade they made candies banned all year round, so this had become a real money making opportunity. We had figured out that pixie sticks were in high demand since they were found too quickly in backpack/locker checks and you couldn't put it into your cavity. So what we could do was pack a straw with our milk, fill a balloon with the pixie sugar and a lighter. We would go to the bathroom and light one end of the straw to close it off, then fill it and crimp the other side. These pixie parcels were the most difficult thing to carry in, so they were worth $2 an ounce. By 6th grade we had been running this operation and making a pretty good profit, but we got too ahead of ourselves and brought on a 1st grader. The security had found candy wrappers and we were getting the teachers breathing down our necks all the time. A 1st grader is younger, so less suspicions. Right? Yes, but we had a complication. He shit himself before he was able to deposit his load. It was June, so he was wearing shorts and the balloon fell out of his shorts. No, you tell me how the overprotective school board took a 1st grader with a balloon full of white powder and a lighter in his anal cavity. I'll give you a hint. Badly. The kid didn't have the whole story, so he only squealed so much. The cops were called. The substance was tested. They found out it was sugar. Somehow all of the leaders of our cartel were able to cover their ass and not get in trouble, but we did disband. I moved to another town in the following year and haven't been in touch with the kids from my old city. Looking back at it, I cannot imagine how scared the teachers were to find that little red balloon in Jim's shorts. Pin badges. I went to a Catholic secondary school in Wales, so we all wore pretty boring uniforms. They were bland as fuck. One day, I forget why, the school decided that we could add a little flair to our school wardrobe using pin badges as a way to express our individuality. Point. The reason they got banned within a month was twofold. 1. This was around the time South Park came out and was wildly popular, so most of the badges were from the show and some were pretty crass and rude. However, most were tame, just character pictures, but being a Catholic school, they did not want anyone to be associated with such a naughty show too. Not long after they allowed pin badges, a lot of girls and some guys started wearing their badges on their crotches. Seriously, these girls had giant triangles with up to 20 badges centered right on their crotch. I think less guys did it because of the risk of penile injury. This did not sit well with the administration due to the obvious imagery, and they were promptly banned. Point. Other things that got banned from my school: slushes/slurpees due to the increased trash Pixie sticks because of the trash and kids snorting them, Tamagotchis because they were a distraction, any Gamma Boy or Walkman, if they caught you with it, that one teachers were torn on, so we got away with it more. Pogs at some point, and a bunch of other stuff. The only thing that never got banned that should have been were conkers, as those were the equivalent of carrying a roll of quarters around to whack people with. Plus they'd fly off their string a lot and hit people in the eye. Tradition trumps safety, I guess. Saying the word buttress. One day in 6th grade we had this substitute teacher, and he was kind of a crotchety older guy. Let's call him Mr. Trudeau. I had a classmate, we'll call him Richard. Now Richard was a piece of shit who mouthed off all the time, and generally just thought he was real hot shit. Mr. Trudeau was teaching, and Richard kept interrupting, talking back, and generally just being a dick. Finally, Mr. Trudeau snaps and calls him a faking smartass. When the school found out about this, shit got real. This was basically the 9/11 of my elementary/middle school. Granted, the actual 9/11 had only happened like 5 years prior to this event. We had the principal come in the next week to talk about the incident. We each had to anonymously write down our recollection of the events. It was just a whole clusterfuck. Then they brought in a team of conflict professionals to help us all cope. They broke the entire middle school, 6th 8th grade, into groups of 15 to 20 kids and asked us to say words that hurt our feelings. So now you have a bunch of 11 to 14-year-olds saying fuck, shit, cunt, beach, nigger, and any other bad word you can think of. The conflict professionals wrote these words down on the board as we went. The purpose was to take the power away from these words and show us that they are just words. Well, one kid raises his hand and says, buttress. The professionals were clearly stifling laughter and asked, why does that word hurt your feelings? Well, we read it in a textbook once and everyone just started calling me it. I dunno. So they wrote buttress down on the board. We all loved the idea of using buttress as an insult, so we all started calling each other buttress. After a few weeks, the teachers finally decided to ban it. This may be a weird one, but it's my fault. Warning for long story/block text. Freshmen can't go to prom. So I went to a private school. It wasn't some super top elite school or anything, but it was private and relatively old school. Well, freshmen used to go to prom all the time, but the thing was, it was always freshman girls. I mean, that was a staple since the 60s. The hottest senior taking the hottest freshman. You know, that crap. However, here comes me. I was an awkward freshman who did football in the fall and wanted to try theater for their spring musical. So I made the role of Coach Dunbar in Footloose. Well, for any of you that has ever done theater, it is literally a co-ed activity that includes a lot of sweating, long hours, and you guessed it, outfit changing. So this was pretty much how I got my first kiss. She was a really nice girl. I thought she was really cute, but she was a really awkward senior. She took a liking to me, and for some reason I made a couple of clumsy one-liners. And it worked. The school was up in arms because we continued to date. It was sort of cute, although looking back I cringe at us together. We looked like siblings when we walked together. Damn this Italian short height. Well, the school was terrified when I went to buy a prom ticket cause she asked me. A couple of hours later, I was told my ticket could not be purchased due to changes in the student handbook, hence the rule. Sorry future kids, I just wanted to get us some nookie. Lol, this question is so perfectly timed for this purpose. I've told this story like 3 times in the past 2 weeks. Elementary school, 2nd grade, Mrs. MSK's class. I was born in 1991, so you may have figured out that this was around the time where Pokemon cards were gaining traction at unstoppable speeds. Shortly before the incident, Pokemon cards were banned at my school because allegedly kids were getting into too many fights over them, though none that I knew had ever seen one of these fights until the incident. Now I haven't seen either of these kids since about 5th grade, but I remember their full names, their faces, and the image of their scrap like it was yesterday. Thomas Castman and Emmett Greger, not their real names, because you trolls can't be trusted, were over by their cubbies going about business like normal when Emmett pushes Thomas. The teacher has her back turned and doesn't notice what is transpiring by the cubbies. Thomas shoves Emmett back, expecting him to submit like the little crybaby beach he had always been, but not today. Emmett lunges at Thomas, tackles him to the ground and starts taking sloppy weak shots at all the kill spots, face, neck, head, while Thomas is screaming bloody murder. I had never witnessed violence before this point in my life, and it was all very exciting. Mrs. MSK rushes over and rips them apart. She starts questioning them on their motive for fighting, and the fools instantly confessed that Thomas had trade-wrapped Emmett for some Pecan cards. Of course, Pecan was banned at school, so they were both sent to the principal to be appropriately punished. I didn't really care about Pecan, so the banishment was no skin off my nose. But I'm not kidding when I say this. Emmett was a seriously whinny and insufferable, snitching his beach, so it felt really good to be there, to witness the day and the event which finally made him decide to be a man and fight his own battles. Also, Thomas was always an arrogant little douche, so the whole incident gave me a real karma boner. Everything. I grew up in Australia and went to a Catholic elementary school. Fun was discouraged pretty heavily. The only thing we were allowed to bring to school, outside of books and pens, was a tennis ball. A faking tennis ball. Anything else was confiscated. All the wonderful fads of the 90s came and went, and every single one went on the they can't be trusted with that list. Pogs. Banned. Tazos. None of us could take someone's eye out. Literally one on the reasons given. Pokemon cards? Actually yeah, for about 3 days. Then, crushed in the jaws of Tyrannosaurus Rex. Did that stop us? You bet your sweet and sour nopes it didn't. We went underground. I sold black market candy at heavily inflated prices, ran an illegal Digimon battle ring behind a tree, and got yelled at for stupid shit more times than I can count. The rationale was never really given, but seemed to revolve around platitudes of it being dangerous somehow. You'll hurt someone etc. Sorry. I think I needed to get that off my chest. I hated that school, and most of the teachers. They treated all the kids like idiots, and were masters of hypocrisy. The level of special treatment kids got, if their parents were rich, or doctors, was amazing. Thank you Reddit and therapy. Oh boy, I've got a lot of high school stories for you guys. Eating food in the courtyard outside. Why? Because people would go to Burger King and get food, and that's a crime against humanity of course. Why let people eat outside when you have a huge courtyard with hundreds of benches for people to sit on? In fact, why even let people outside at all? After all, they could get hurt. All the benches you painted with $6 million of taxpayer money last year. Any and all unsealed bottles or other liquid containers. Some dumb beach got caught with vodka in a bottle, and what better way to address the problem than punishing every student by forcing them to use the 50-year-old water fountains with just barely enough pressure to clear the nozzle? Good sheet. Bringing your own food to school. Some dumb sheet brought wheat brownies and terrified the administration, so they just outright banned bringing food to school for the year. It didn't last longer than a few months due to the backlash. Free time of any kind. Lunch period. You must wait in line and scan into the cafeteria. Oh, and you can't be anywhere else. Otherwise enjoy your suspension for devious activities. Because someone who didn't have lunch that period threw a pizza at a whole monitor. A fake. This is still going on. Absolutely no communication with teachers outside of class. No emails. No phone calls. No texting. Nothing. My senior year of HS, a group of us used to just chill in my psych professor's room after class and play Tekken. We all got phone calls home due to not scanning into the cafeteria, but who gives a shit? My parents told them to go pound sand. Anyways, teacher gets suspended for 3 days, reinstated after backlash from parents, because the dude was awesome and the administration is retarded. Got even more stories, but fuck me, that school was retarded. The freshman kidnapping. Granted, this over the year I left, but still. So in marching band there would be a random day where juniors and seniors would kidnap freshmen or new sophomores, juniors, and seniors. The instructor knew it happened, but kept his mouth shut because it was genuine fun. Kidnappees' parents would get emails asking if it was okay. After parents let their kids into their house at like 5 AM and take them into the car. They would drive down to a playground and do random shit to them then buy breakfast. One year some morons asked the principal if it was okay to do and got shut down. My kidnapping was pretty bad myself because I had my friend who didn't follow the rules. He woke me up with a bicycle horn in my face, dragged me out of bed and let me put clothes on. After I got dressed he shoved fireballs in my mouth and taped my mouth closed. As we got to the car he taped my hands behind my back and tossed me into the car with my 2 other friends. He flew down the road in his car swerving about, and we had no seat belts on, so we were bumping into each other. After we got to the playground, he had 3 magic cards in his hand and we each had to choose one. It was a swamp, island, and forest. Whoever got the swamp got jam covered in their face, whoever got forest had to eat a whole cantaloupe, as in everything, and whoever got the island had to chug water down until they puked. I got the island. After that we got thrown around a bit and shoved into small uncomfortable spots with many other kids. Then we were taken to breakfast. I had to pee a lot after that. The Naked Mile probably won't be seen, but still was one of the most memorable bands I will ever be a part of. My school is an all-boys Catholic school, and every year the senior class puts on a retreat for the junior class. It's supposed to help you get closer to God. It was put on over a weekend. There was always a rumor though, that on Saturday night there was a Naked Mile run through the campsite. Cut to my senior year and my class is hosting the retreat, and it has been a good retreat for all intensive purposes. Saturday night rolls around, and a group of my senior classmates and I start going around to the junior bunks and making noise about the Naked Mile. Now normally the juniors get scared, and then we let them know it was all a prank. This junior class however decided to go full on board with it. 16-year-old boys are now streaking through the campsite making all kinds of noise, waking up teachers and fellow campers nearby. When we finally got back to civilization there was a long talk about what to do with this and what type of punishment should be handed down. A lot of talk happened, but no punishment was ever handed down. From this day on at the start of every retreat they begin it with opening prayer and then followed shortly by there is no Naked Mile. TLDR, got high school juniors to run around naked at a retreat. No longer allowed. Oh man, my school has a ton of stupid rules. Solid color shirts, because that was for gang members apparently. Shoelaces, also apparently used to identify gangs. The color yellow, because there was a gang that wore yellow in the area. Writing in anything but black ink, because it was discriminatory against colorblind people. I had to rewrite a paper once because I used blue ink. Carrot, this one is especially ironic because our school staff has been criticized by the NARC for being racist. Shorts, because they are sexual. Sleeveless shirts, also 2 sexual. V-neck shirts, because they are also 2 sexual. Hats, not really sure why. Taking prescribed medication, because you could try to sneak drugs. Opaque water bottles, because you could bring alcohol. Waiting on school campus to be picked up by your parents, because the school is responsible for students while they are on campus. On the same note, arriving to school early. Dropping a class or getting a schedule change. I know multiple people who were forced to drop out of school because they were put in classes that were too advanced for them. Lastly, the chess club had to break all the crosses off of the kings because it's unfair for chess to promote a religion. One year we could not have backpacks unless they were clear plastic. This was in response to a couple of hoax bomb threats. I never made the connection. Also for a while you could pull a suspension by saying cheddar fries out loud. There was a severely autistic kid at our school, and sometimes they do a behavior called scripting where they randomly repeat something for no apparent reason. This kid would sit quietly in class for maybe half an hour, then moan scream cheddar fries at the top of his lungs without moving or changing his expression. People thought that was pretty funny, and come on, it kind of was. It became a trend to randomly squeal cheddar fries during class, or the middle of an assembly, or basically whenever you could make a teacher uncomfortable and get away with it. There was something about the way he emphasized the syllables that made it hilarious to most of us. So teachers started nailing kids with punishments for referring to cheddar fries, or having a bag of them on their desk, or saying the phrase out loud. It was controversial, since cheddar fries were the trendy snack, and one of the only snacks you could buy in our cafeteria. It was one of my first experiences both with mob cruelty and the haplessness of political correctness. What a school. Class trips abroad. We were 15 over 16 years old and had collected enough money to go to Barcelona for almost a week. 2 teachers and 6 parents from kids in the class were with us, about 25 students, to chaperone and make sure we stayed out of trouble. First night we got there, we went straight to the closest supermarket and bought cheap beers and vodka, and then went clubbing late into the night. This continued the whole week, with some parents participating in our drinking/clubbing, and a group of us even ran into them outside of a bar while they were out drinking as well. One parent, who was a strict guy from the military, was sheet-faced and made a racist remark about a black guy walking around, or rather it was dark outside so all he could see was the jacket just walking around by itself. When we got back to our country, we all told our friends in other classes and school about the awesome drinking trip we just had. Rumors reached our principal, who then had a talk with our teachers, who then had a talk with our whole class. Our female teacher had been totally oblivious to our drinking, and she stood in front of us saying we all know the rumors about our trip was totally untrue. We were such a good bunch of kids who had been well behaved. Meanwhile our male teacher stood there nodding, while simultaneously winking at us as she spoke. Best trip I've ever been on. Chemistry was almost banned. Junior year, chemistry class with a kid who was infamous for being a grade A douche machine, never did a day of work in his life, and disrupted any class you were unfortunate enough to be in with him. We are learning about endothermic and exothermic reactions, where the chemicals change temperature during the reaction. Teacher passes around bottles of sodium hydroxide and some other chemical I can't remember. The bottles end up on this kid, Ryan's, desk and immediately realizes this is bad, so she takes them away, passes out a worksheet for us to fill out, and leaves the room to make some copies or some sheet. Ryan is out of his chair to get the chemicals and asks some kid sitting near him, "Who wants to pay me $10 to drink the hot stuff?" So, of course, someone jokingly says yeah sure, and he faking takes a swig of sodium hydroxide, a major component of Drano. Long story short, he was in the hospital for almost a month and was very close to having his esophagus replaced over a stupid bet. Kids joked all year about doing stupid sheet for $10. Lots of sheet. Let's see, in chronological order, stuff I can remember. Bakugan. First grade, kids were using them in class instead of listening to the teacher. Blades. 4th grade, some kid touched one while people were using them, and it hurt his finger I guess. He went to the teacher. Bye bye blades. We formed a secret blade club at lunch. 6th grade. Chinese Yoanasaka Diabolus, similar to blade situation. Some idiot stood too close to one, got hit, made a scene, there went Diabolus. Also 6th grade, Yu-Gi-Oh cards and blades. This one was kinda my fault. Basically I had set up a pretty good business of selling off my extra Yu-Gi-Oh cards and blades. This made me a lot of money which I would go and spend on Wizard 101 and other games. I was pretty happy. Me and my friends sat on this hill at our school and we would play Yu-Gi-Oh and stuff. Well, there was this special needs kid who noticed us, so he decided to come hang with us. We didn't mind this as he himself was pretty chill, but since he was classified special needs he has a helper with him as per school rules. They all get helper assistance people. Anyways, his was this middle-aged blonde lady who was kind of a beach. As if playing Yu-Gi-Oh was uncool enough, whenever someone came on that hill, or us, said a cuss word, she would tell us no cussing, I will take you to the dean, etc. This lady is also the one who took my friend and I to the dean, because she thought we were fighting. We were just play fighting, wrestling, whatever you wanna call it, and we had to waste an hour out of class to wait for the dean, just to spend 5 minutes with him saying we were not fighting each other, that we are friends, etc. I assume this lady knew we didn't like her, and I guess this was her way of getting back at us, but she witnessed me selling some cards to a friend, and she decided she didn't like that, so she went to the principal and got Yu-Gi-Oh and blades banned altogether. Lady, don't get sales banned, just ban the entire game. 7th grade, Smarties, candy in general. Our school went through that smoking Smarties phase that you probably know of. I never tried it, but I got banned pretty fast after news that some kids in another state got maggots in their lungs because of the sugar. I guess they were heavy users, so they banned that 8th grade. Stink bums. You can probably guess why, but anyways, there was no specific ban on these for whatever reason, but after some kids got some from an ice cream truck that sells stink bombs near the school and used them to unleash hell on the bathrooms, there was a very clear ban on them. Also 8th grade, sharpers, kids were using them for graffiti. Enough said. Also 8th grade, and probably the worst of all for my situation, tech decks, another one that was kind of my fault. Tech decks started to get popular. I picked up on this trend. My old instincts from 6th grade kicked in. I had lots of tech decks I didn't care for, and I realized it would be a good time to sell them. I started out just selling to my friends, but it blew up. Kids were literally rushing me to buy tech decks. It was crazy. I had people blackmailing me. Sheet like, if you don't give them to me for free I'll tell on you. But I stood my ground and never gave in. It paid off, literally. Anyways, kids started using the tech decks. I sold them in class, to the point where every class I went to our teacher would have to say something like, "Do not use those little skateboards," or I had to take away more of those little skateboards today. I got scared. What if some kid snitched on me? Thank God nobody snitched, and the teachers never suspected I was supplying all these tech decks, because I had a 4.0 GPA, was well behaved in every class, all around good student. I never ended up getting in trouble, but boy was I nervous. 9th grade, first year of high school, gummy candy, even during lunch and stuff, because a senior we all knew started selling these things called ghetto worms, which were the gummy worms dipped in Kool-Aid, and who knows what else if anything. Teachers thought it might be alcohol or something, so they stopped gummy candy, because they couldn't tell if it was ghetto version or not. Mad props to the senior. He reminds me of myself in middle school, always selling sheet. He was friends with my 5th period teacher, so she let him come in every day and sell Gatorades he got at the 99-cent store for $2. Dude made a ton of money throughout the year. Let's see what happens in 10th grade. I start end of August. Sorry for the long post, but those are all of the bands I remember: TLD barbecue guns, B-blades, Chinese yoyos, UGIO cards, Smarties, Sharpers, stink bombs, tech decks, gummy candy, and other stuff I'm not remembering. Some partially my fault, some not. I got a lot of things banned in my elementary years, mostly during art classes. Markers were a big one. After an incident where an entire table of us built marker swords that were twice as tall as we were, and then proceeded to hit each other with our newly constructed weapons as hard as we could, which of course sent projectile markers flying in every possible direction around the room, we were relegated back to crayons and colored pencils for a very long time. Liquid glue also had to go. I had developed a habit, after finishing projects early for an entire week straight, of coating one hand in a thin layer of liquid glue and then sticking both hands together until class ended, when I would pull them apart and then spend the bus ride home picking off the glue skin. The problem arose when other kids tried to copy me. I say tried, because while I was careful to only use enough glue to just cover my tiny hands, these kids would just dump half a bottle of glue over themselves and then proceed to drip it everywhere while they waved their sticky hands in the air like animals. They didn't even bother to finish their projects first, the amateurs. Needless to say, no more liquid glue in the art room. The worst though was the time they made the mistake of trusting an entire room of small, easily bored children with open pots of glitter. My table decided the best thing to do with open pots of glitter was, you guessed it, glitter fight. What started out as just pinching tiny bits of glitter out of the pots and flinging them at each other at some point devolved into just dumping entire pots over each other's heads. I'm not sure if any of you have ever had glitter poured over your head, but let me elaborate on why this was a terrible idea. Glitter is basically tiny little shards of glass. It has lots of sharp, pointy little edges, which are perfectly designed to embed themselves in the soft skin of a child's scalp. It wasn't so much the mess that was the problem as it was the other children's parents calling the school, furiously demanding to know who had done such a horrific thing to their poor little angels' heads. Hooligans though we may have been, none of us would rat each other out, so rather than being able to just ban one of us from using glitter unsupervised, glitter of any kind was unofficially banned from the entire school until every child in that classroom had moved on to middle school. This happened when I was in the first grade, so there was no glitter allowed for 5 years. 5 years of the most unwhimsical children's art projects ever. I started noticing after a while that my art classes seemed to be supervised by teachers' assistants more often than any others. I wonder why. Stupid bans that totally weren't my fault in any way. I got beached at by the same administrator all through high school for wearing fingerless gloves. Apparently they're somehow a gang thing, because all gangsters have cold hands. Also no hoods up on jackets, hoodies, coats, anything, even in the halls, even in the morning, or when you're leaving. If you're on school property, your head had to be exposed. You could actually get detention for walking inside out of pouring rain and not putting your hood down fast enough. Or putting your hood up before walking out the door into the pouring rain. You had to walk out and get wet before you could put your hood on to keep you from getting wet. There was never a reason given for that one. They just liked giving detention, I guess. There were others, but those were the most notably ridiculous that I can remember. Any form of liquid in a bottle was banned in my school, and the ban started this summer when we needed something to drink the most. The reason my school did this was because of several different reasons from rumors I heard around from teachers and peers. One reason was because some crazy chick apparently filled a water bottle with alcohol and was planning on using it as a Molotov cocktail. I know, sounds crazy, on her ex-lover. Another reason, which I believe was the most reasonable to this ban, was due to the senior prank. An idiot in my school created a Facebook page and invited literally everyone, not just seniors in my school, but everyone, to leave suggestions to what the senior prank should be, and someone suggested that we have a water fight, and since we have high security at our school, water balloons were a no-no, but water bottles were the least suspicious. Now I understand the choice this guy made in making the page, since mostly anyone owns a Facebook account, but he made it freaking public to anyone who came across it, including the principal. So the principal found out, banned the all liquids in bottles, suspended some students who decided to rebel by bringing frozen water saying it's not liquid, and expected us to drink out the sheety water fountains. The funny thing is that, while the principal was all goody-goody at the graduation saying how much he'll miss us seniors, he actually hated us. He expressed it like, "Oh, can't wait till those seniors are out of my school," when he came to our yearbook photoshoot, not knowing that some of the students working on the yearbook, including myself, were seniors. He even asked, "Are any of you seniors?" And when we raised our hands, he laughed like freaking hyena and left the room. Point anyway, sorry for the long post, but that was the ban that happened in my school. Hoodies and colored plastic. Point. Our school for Spirit Week would see each class decorate their respective hall. Imagine it a story square with the class color. People would wear the class color ECT. Point. For that day, each class had their own hall where you had your locker at, and as you moved up in grade, you'd move your locker to the next hall. Seniors were the only ones downstairs, and the senior class color was black. And this was the year of Columbine, so we would wear black hoodies. All the classes had hoodies that had our last name and year graduating on it, and decorate our hallway with black paper that everyone would write on black plastic sheets over the lights, which had the effect of darkening the hallway. And senior rushes. Point. So the seniors had what they called the senior rush, where they would start at one specific hallway, start chanting seniors, seniors, and run through the entire school like a battering ram. Nobody ever got hurt by this, although I know it probably intimidated some of the lower classmen. Fuck 'em though, right, when we'd do it. So we were told, a literal week before our decoration was supposed to go up, that we could no longer, due to Columbine, black out the lights, wear black hoodies. We ordered them through the school, or do the senior rush. Point. All of which we wound up doing anyways, since we were the class of 2000 and weren't going to let some bussy-minded administrators stop us. We ordered our own hoodies from a student, but were then advised we couldn't wear them due to a modification of the dress code, of which I got in trouble for taking a picture of me wearing it, hood up, before school started, and was taken to the office and made to sit there until my father could come with a change of clothes. Which was then even more hilarious when he told them that I would not be changing. I would be going back to class, and if they retaliated against me in any way he would file suit against the district, the teacher, and my class administrator for violation of civil rights, since hoodies weren't in the dress code and I was, quote, expressing myself. It also helped that he had filed a prior lawsuit against the school when they almost expelled me when Summer's whole kid put a fake hit list in my locker post-Columbine and the school didn't even bother with a handwriting comparison before expulsion, with the hoods up. The black paper and plastic still went up, and we did multiple senior rushes. Far as I know from what my younger bro told me, they eliminated the ability for people to wear hoodies anymore, because it was bullying and intimidation, and they banned decorating the halls for any kind of Spirit Week showing. Well, where to begin? First of all, we weren't allowed to wear any colors besides navy, white, black, or khaki. Shoes had to match these colors, and had to be solid. You also weren't allowed to wear all the same color pants and shirts, or they thought you were representing a gang, even khaki on khaki. Shirts had to be polo and the company emblem couldn't be any larger than a quarter. Pants had to be slacks or khakis, no blue jeans, no jewelry of any kind boys and girls. You had to have on a belt every day, and it had to be a certain style and size. No colored hair. No extreme hair. Only clear backpacks, no jackets in class, no backpacks in class. Kids were constantly going to ICE for having their shirt untucked, not wearing the right color shoes or socks, not having a belt, or wearing khaki on khaki, stupid stuff like that. Basically the entire 4 years of high school for me was virtually no learning and just punishment. It was a constant distraction having somebody getting in trouble because of it, and paperwork teachers had to do which added more time not teaching. It was more or less a prison, or training for prison. Not to mention it is a poverty-stricken area, and kids/parents had to provide their own clothes, so some kids would wear the same pair or 2 pairs of clothes every day all year. Caused lots of joking and smelly situations, which is the reason they created it, to cut down on joking and improve hygiene. Sheet administration at Sumter County schools in Georgia. Once some student actually read through the rulebook and student planner policy pages and saw that standing for the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag is optional and chose not to stand. Just a normal white kid who thought, hey, I'm gonna see what they do if I try to use this rule to not have to stand and swear allegiance to the flag every morning at 7:30 a.m. The school sent home a school-wide letter to 4,000 people and their families, saying this is a bad thing and patriotism 9/11 ECT point, you should all keep playing along, do as we say, and blah blah blah. Beyond that, the reaction was really extreme as far as I was concerned, like someone breaking the mold. Even a tiny little bit was so upsetting to these people that they didn't know what to do. The kid wasn't doing it for any political reasons, wasn't like a religious or Muslim person or anything, more like thought, oh cool, I don't have to do this stupid thing every day anymore. I found a rule that provides me a tiny little bit of freedom over my own bodily movements in school every day, and to use what he probably saw as the only chance he had all day in school to make an independent choice of his own / be able to not do the dumb things he was expected to do every day through no choice of his own. Or maybe he was just trolling. They should have just ignored it and allowed the freedom of choice to him and let him just sit down / rest instead of standing around every morning swearing allegiance to a flag like a North Korean. But instead some teachers and other students tried to physically force him to stand up, etc. I wonder if he could have sued them or something. So they basically banned not standing for the Pledge of Allegiance, even though it was informal, as it's illegal to try and restrict. They decided that this tiny act of free choice was serious troublemaking that can affect everyone. Oh my god. Point there were lots of things like that in my school where a bunch of retards from the administration / adult population in the school did things that were pointless and borderline illegal and could have resulted in serious lawsuits if the kid told their parents and the parents were the litigious type. They'd bring kids into a small office and strip search them for drugs and find nothing without contacting the parent. Bunch of really borderline things in a small town full of rich white people. Some incidents of adults in the administration abusing kids sexually as well. Somehow they got away with it and weren't prosecuted, even though they lost their job. I came away from high school thinking schools in America are really oddly like prisons, and the adults are generally careless / abusive / self-absorbed. And it's probably going to be seen as a horrible institution in the future when we have better ways to educate people, like online. That flag incident, for example, what did it matter if one kid didn't stand for the Pledge of Allegiance and mouth the words to it, or mumble through like everyone else? Did they think they were going to suddenly lose control over the prisoners, or that somehow this was going to negatively impact America? Or was it just a matter of maintaining their habits and control over the kids? Guess some schools are better than others. Quoting movies or TV on campus. The students in our FBLA leadership group were in charge of putting together assemblies for the school, which usually would have dancing, singing, comedy relief of some sort. There were a few consecutive years where the assemblies were these brilliant and hilarious variety shows. The skits and jokes were about the culture of the school, or particular teachers or students. The assemblies were so popular that they would get students to attend school for an assembly who would have skipped otherwise. Then the jokes at the assemblies would become weird inside jokes for the whole school. It was a pretty neat time. Then, the 3 students who were basically in charge of everything for those assemblies graduated at the same time. Their FBLA replacements tried to do their best to make the assemblies funny, but it wasn't the same. Eventually the replacements became desperate, and for the skit parts of the assemblies, they would try to relate some random goings on at school into an old SNL sketch. The sketches would be stolen almost word for word from SNL. They did a lot of Adam Sandler and Chris Farley, motivational speak, in a van, down by the river. They also did some scenes from the movie Old School. Their assemblies were uninspired. Lower common denominator students would repeat the dialogue of the sketches in class, even though it really wasn't funny. Eventually it became a problem for teachers, because the students repeating the sketch dialogue would become belligerent and interrupt class. The administration banned quoting movies or TV, stating that the reasoning was that it dampened our creative environment, slowed intellectual maturing, and blunted the originality of our students. I transferred schools about 2 months later, so I really don't know what happened after that. I went to school in Kent, Washington, about 20 minutes from Seattle. Pokemon cards 2001 was an awesome time. The world was absolutely obsessed with anything Pokemon related. Pokemon cards became that thing everyone talked about and wanted, and really the only thing of interest for 100 or so children every time we went to recess or had free time. My particular grade 6 class was full of a special combination of dumb and unhinged students. Of those 25 or so kids, only 6 would even go on to graduate high school, if that helps paint a picture. One sunny afternoon, a particularly lonely and heavy-set kid came to school with a shoebox full of Pokemon cards, and all hell broke loose. He was that type of kid who drew ire and sympathy from those around. He always seemed sullen and depressed, like he had a shitty home life. But he was also the kid that got caught jerking off in class 3 years earlier, so kids felt bad for him, but definitely alienated the fuck out of him too. So when he showed up and just set that shoebox full of hundreds of cards before our feet, we all took advantage of the poor kid. One kid asked if he could have one, and then another and another before everyone had a hand in. He just kept smiling and nodding, and I think enjoying all the friendly attention, but eventually he was crying hysterically, surrounded in a room full of bruised kids and damaged Pokemon cards. It all just turned into a free-for-all. It took 10 minutes or so of several teachers and adults interfering before the chaos calmed down, and we had emergency meetings in each classroom where card games of any kind, with the focus on Pokemon, are permanently banned. The kid who lost all his cards stayed home for a few days, and everyone was punished in one way or another. I was in high school in the 90s at a tiny private Christian school, so many things were banned. Here are some. Any top that reveals the bra straps. Thin strap tanks were just coming in, and girls wanted to wear them and nobody was allowed. They wouldn't allow regular tank tops either, the yin and yang symbol, because it represents a Taoist religious principle. They would closely scrutinize any stars for signs of being Wiccan. Stars of David were okay. peace signs, because the admins were idiots who bought into the claim that was then circulating that the peace sign was a broken cross and therefore satanic, instead of two stylized letter P's back to back, the original intent. I was a huge dork and drew math symbols on my nails with nail polish. A teacher made me explain each and every one, suspicious in case they were occult. I don't know why she didn't already know what pi and the infinity sign were. Any shirt revealing the belly, including when the arms are raised above the head. Any teacher could at any time demand a girl raise her arms to see if her shirt was too short. Any skirt shorter than 4 inches above the knee. This was impossible because it requires a different skirt length based on the girl's height. So everyone just wore maxi skirts, no beards or facial hair on guys. This was almost the only restriction that applied to guys specifically, and it was bullshit because there was like one guy in the entire school that could actually grow a beard, edited to add more as I remembered more of the goofy rules. I'm way too late to this thread, but our school specifically banned 2 things at school dances: SSI, simulated sexual intercourse, and NSD, nestled spoon dancing, at school dances. These dreaded acronyms were the scourge of the earth, followed only by girls wearing skirts above their knees, girls not wearing undershirts thus rendering their bras visible, girls wearing pants, tough it out in winter, pants are for hoes, girls wearing sweaters tied around their waist. One teacher told us it made us look like dump trucks boys with facial hair in non-approved lengths and shapes, humans of different genders hugging each other on school property, belly button piercings, double ear piercings, nose piercings, and excessive makeup or visibly artificial hair dye. It was a Catholic school in the American South. Our principal was a nun, and she would come on the loudspeakers daily to announce this ban, in a loud, angry tone, continually referencing these acronyms, as if they were in the general lexicon. This went on for months. Students, and some teachers, almost lost our minds trying not to laugh. The only thing I can compare it to is the incredibly strong and appropriate urge to laugh you get at a funeral, but school-wide, every afternoon, and everyone around you is feeling the exact same way. Some days I would walk to my car after school and just laugh until I cried. Other days I would write threatening notes to friends, pretending to be the CIA, and asking for willing informants. It did work, though. As far as I know, people stopped having sex at our high school because it got to be too risky. Kidding. I mean, I didn't have sex, but that was because I was abused at home, and I was just trying to deal with that. Everyone else screwed like rabbits. The president of our school's abstinence club, I swear to God, that surreal thing, got pregnant. Twice. 2 different girls, in different years. Poor things. That's what happens when schools treat sex like a disease, and expect young ladies to be chaste vessels, eternally waiting for their husband to fill them with the Spirit of Christ. I'm quoting our religion class lectures on sexuality there. The funny thing, well, not so much funny as horrible, was that a teacher later revealed a nun principal had made sexual advances toward her. She rejected them clearly, so the principal harassed her for years, until her cardiologist told her she'd have to retire, or die, because the stress was exacerbating her heart problems. We all witnessed the harassment too, but didn't understand what was behind the malice. The teacher was a very nice, kind, charming, incredibly intelligent person who genuinely loved teaching her subject. She also helped me out a lot, personally, which I really needed, because my home life was rough and school was my escape. So, the nun crusader was a whited sepulcher. Quell surprise. Well, markers, lasers, e-cigarettes, I love boobas bracelets, changing of wallpapers. I was a part of our school's id staff and this was hilarious. Legit made it so they couldn't change the background and had to fix a bunch of various workarounds to do so. Slits in eyebrows, kissing, certain hugging, selling food at lunch. It was a charter school, so we didn't have traditional lunch. It was more of a snack bar you bought normal food at, so people just started selling their own food for cheap. Lots of people were banned from computers. Charging phones on computers wasn't allowed. Hanging out in the front for too long after school. Having spaces in your schedule, unless you were cool with the right people. And lead pencils at a one point edit I almost forgot. They made it so, if you showed up late, you couldn't go to your first class. You had to sit in this room and wait. Well, people just started ditching their first class and the idea went downhill fast. Another faking. Edit, I forgot the best one. They banned sweatshirts. The reason for this is cause it was hot AF, and since people don't like uniforms, mid-school had the khaki pants / collared shirt dress code, they just wore sweatshirts all the time. So the school said that you can't wear sweatshirts unless they thought it was cold enough. Pretty funny cause I remember wearing sweatshirts at high temps and just got used to it. The year was 1998. I was a 7th grader at the time. The Pokemon TCG had just been released by Wizards here in the US. I was fortunate enough to be a student who did work at home, made an allowance, and was able to get what I wanted with said money. Needless to say, I bought several decks / packs of Pokemon trading cards. At the time, our school didn't care if we brought them, as long as we didn't take them out during class. Well, that changed after about a month, largely due to me. There were many kids at the school whose parents would not allow them to have Pokemon cards. So, being the kind-hearted 7th grader that I was, I sold my duplicate cards to those less fortunate. I don't remember the name of the magazine, but it had card price listings in it. The prices were pretty outrageous for some of the individual, very common cards. If I remember right, one Pikachu was valued at $3.50. Regardless though, these kids bought them at those prices. My business started slow, but eventually bloomed quite well. The day that I came home with $300+ was the day my mother freaked out. She didn't want me to get in trouble from another parent calling the school, demanding their children's money be returned, so she called the school and told them what was going on. The next day, an announcement was made over the intercom that all trading cards were banned from the school points. Despite the cards being banned, I did get to keep the money I made. Bubble fluid. Here's why. Point: during grade 4, my classroom split into two main factions, called teams, and a few smaller ones. The major factions were Shroom Unrelated, the Psychedelic, lead by who we will call Jake, and Bubble, lead by who we will call Alex. The team leader was considered an absolute dictator, and disobeying them would result in being removed from the team, losing most of your friends. Shroom was slightly smaller. Being on a team meant drawing the team's logo, a circle with a smaller circle in the corner, representing a bubble or a simplified mushroom shape with a long stem, and flattened cap for Shroom, on all your schoolwork, severing and creating friendships based on team, and division of classrooms, yards, and so on into team clumps. Chants included: Shroom is pop bubbles with explosive spores, and you can't pop a bubble, you just make more bubbles, which is a bit nonsensical. There was also neutral, which began as a legitimate position of indifference to teams, but soon evolved into a team of its own, known as the neutral team. People could move between teams, but there was a screening process to make sure you were not spying. What information exactly a team possessed that would be valuable to another was unsure. Shroom entry was somewhat lax, as the smaller team, they wanted to let people in easily, but the bubble team required a 3, or maybe 2, I forget, it was definitely more than 1 day screening process consisting of a bubble member watching your in lunch and recess activities and an interview with Alex. I was initially a Shroom, but left after Jake got too tyrannical. I went to Bubble, which was fine, but I had trouble making friends with other bubbles. Eventually I started saying I'm not on a team. This was to avoid confusion, as most neutrals had formed the neutral team by then, which had an uneasy relationship with the bubble team, but offered their own procedure to join, including a test of physical ability, something other teams didn't test. Our teacher wasn't fond of teams, but couldn't do much apart from ban a form of bubble expression, which was simultaneous bubble blowing by numerous team members. I eventually conducted an online survey using the then new Google Forms to get team stats, but by then teams had begun to diminish as Jake and Alex began to move on to other things. Some people tried to take over the teams, but they didn't last long. If anyone is interested, I will publish the results with names anonymized. TLDR, class went insane and turned into 2 dictatorship student-run teams. Teacher banned the only thing he could think of. I've got 2 here. 1. Having women's tug of war as a sports event. When I asked the teacher that bandit the reason why she did, she claimed something like tug of war not being good for your uterus or some bullshit like that. I was extremely upset because I was one of the athletes involved in the sport. Plus she abolished the prefect's marching squad that time as well. I was the commander of the squad at that time and had found out this information from other prefects and not from her directly. And so I sat on the clough overlooking the track watching melancholically as my male friends participated happily in the tug of war event too. The fainting game / the pass out challenge. A little backstory. I was in the pure sciences, first class, and was a senior in high school. This story involved the first and second class, which were the only two science elective classes in the form. And it was a type of school that would glamorize the higher classes and look down on the lower classes, which was probably one of the reasons why it blew up as huge as it did. There would be a 1-hour period where the Muslim students would have Islamic studies in a separate class, while the non-Muslim students would study something else. During these periods, the first and second classes would combine. Note, I was in that Islamic studies class, so part of what I tell now is only due to what I have heard from other students. There are a couple of goofballs in the class, and it seemed as if the teacher who was supposed to supervise the class was not present. At that time, the fainting game was going viral in social media, so they thought it would be a great idea to whip out their phones and record themselves doing the challenge. While one of the guys was doing the challenge, he stood up, and the lack of oxygen in his brain got to him temporarily, which caused him to fall and black out for a short while. When he fell, his head slammed against the edge of the door hinge, which caused his head to swell up. So a couple of his friends, who were not involved in the whole challenge, went to get him some ice from the school canteen. The problem only started when the guy who recorded the video uploaded it on Facebook. It went viral throughout our school and the neighboring schools who gave a shit about our school. Our school isn't exactly reputable, I should say, and eventually one of the discipline teachers found the video and called everyone who was involved and seen in the video to give their statements about the case. During that week, the science classes were just absolutely chaotic. Classes were cancelled because of the number of students and teachers involved. Till this day I have no idea why so many people were involved, and the prefects, including me, had to run around finding and escorting students to the discipline room. In total, around 3 to 5 people got suspended from school. And the discipline teacher indirectly mentioned during daily assembly that doing these silly games will have consequences. That's how they do things, never going straight to the point, but they just meant that they will suspend you from school. I'd just like to apologize if my English isn't good, because I had to translate some school terms as the words the school used in English. Rubber bands, hair ties, silibans, anything elastic in any way that wasn't clothing, along with paper clips, staples, and anything like that. Story was some kid used a rubber band to fling a paperclip or staple or something at another kid. It went into his ear and ruptured his eardrum, and he was deafened in that ear. From then on we could never have ponytails or hold bundles of paper together. Oh, and also, single color t-shirts of any kind, because they were gang symbols. This was my elementary school. My middle school banned shoes of any kind with black bottoms and rolling backpacks because they had just cleaned the floors before we started school that year and they were afraid we'd scuff it. Some kid allegedly taped a pencil to his shoe and scuffed it all around the school too, so we weren't allowed to have sharpened pencils outside of class. High school banned going to the bathroom at any point without supervision because someone who was wearing glasses at the time got punched in the bathroom and his glasses blinded him permanently. They also made you either not bring in bottles of water, prove to the teacher that the bottle was still sealed, or dump the bottle and refill it from the disgusting yellow water in the fountains if it was already opened. Oh, and this was, of course, done every single class, since a teacher couldn't have watched from the time we got to school until their class. But punching. I don't remember how/why this started, but it quickly turned into an automatic suspension for anyone whose fist touched bum. Also, we used to run a food service for people who didn't want cafeteria lunches. There was a stove and fridge in the teacher's lounge, so we started by making lunch ourselves and pocketing the lunch money our parents sent us to school with. Within a few weeks we were feeding about 1/3 of the school and splitting the profits between us, each pocketing $100 or so a week. You could get literally whatever you wanted. Since we had people returning from off campus just before lunch point, this new source of income elevated us to baller status at our school, and we would often talk the teachers into letting us leave for lunch early so that we could get to work cooking. McDonald's became a common currency and people were willing to pay huge markups on everything for the ability to order what they actually wanted to eat. Point only took about 3 weeks before the school realized why the cafeteria was having serious financial issues and shut us down. The extra kitchen was put under lock and key. All the side doors had emergency exit alarms installed, and all first floor windows had to be closed and locked 10 to 1 to prevent people from dropping food in on their way back from college campus. We continued the underground cafeteria for about 4 more weeks in a constant game of cat and mouse with the faculty. Around lunchtime they would follow any of us who got up to leave the cafeteria. Food smuggling eventually became too similar to drug smuggling, as they would randomly search our lockers and confiscate everything from bread to fruit roll-ups. We eventually gave up because the extra steps we had to take were cutting into our profits, and it just became more of a headache than it was worth. Plastic spoons. There was a kid whose surname sounded like bowl. His group of friends proceeded to tease him behind his back, referring to him as Spoon because cereal. When Bowl found out, he was a pretty good sport about it, so it perpetuated. Spoon was written all over the place in a combination of letters and numbers. Random kids who never even knew Bowl were shouting Spoon in the hallways because they felt cool and involved in stuff. From the mouth of the founding member of the 59007 V/Spoon movement, here is how it all came to a head. We had labeled stickers everywhere with our logo. Some still linger in urinals and gym lockers. It was written on desks. A fan page was made. A couple dozen pins were made. Badges of honor, if you will. Plastic spoons were left in random places all over the school to be found by a lone frustrated janitor. A hand signal was used by elite members of the Spoon group when passing one another in the halls. Bowl was the first to get noticed in this mess. He was called down to the principal as they did suspect it had something to do with his name. As suspension was held over his head, he snitched on all of us. I was one of the final few to be called down. We fessed up to creating this whole mess to the vice principal. He had asked us if this was in any way related to drug use, specifically heroin, per the notice of one of the hall monitors, in which we laughed in his face, as well as the monitors, very hard. We were only ordered to clean up any spoon-related mess that was found, although we were facing expulsion and charges of gang-related vandalism. Plastic spoons were subsequently banned from the students for the rest of the year. Wallet chains, because there was a fight once where one guy took his off to hand to a friend and was accused of using it as a weapon point. But perhaps a better story. During my senior year in a small Midwestern town in the late 90s, our senior t-shirt was banged point. While hanging out one day trying to figure out ideas for the design of our senior t-shirt, one of our friend's mom mentioned how Vietnam vets would wear buttons that said the old line, "When I die, I know I'm going to heaven, because I've already been to hell." We thought this was a great idea, and the artist of our group put together a beautiful design featuring the front of our school with the caption, "When I graduate, I know I'm going to heaven, because I've already been to hell," and on the back it had our graduating year with a halo on one number and devil horns on the other. The whole class signed the back and everyone thought it was a great design. Except the principal, that is. He had some odd idea that we were equating him with the devil and banned the sale of senior shirts on school property. Our artist even took the name of the school off the sign and the front of the design, so it just said "Welcome to High School," but it didn't matter. It definitely looked like the front of our school to those in the know, though. They came out with another, much lamer, design that they ended up selling officially. Meanwhile, 3 of us, including the artist, applied for a business license and sold them out of the back of their car across the street from the school after school let out. People did wear them to school, and people either complied with the order to turn them inside out / change, or were sent home. Most of the teachers thought it was amusing, but went by the rules on school grounds. I remember that we had a physics field trip to Six Flags in which many of us wore that shirt and the teacher was fine with it, as long as we changed before we got back to school. There were also news segments done on it. My 5 seconds of fame. It seems kinda stupid looking back, but it was an interesting bit of drama to liven up the days of a bunch of high schoolers. Now, we had a good number of things banned at my school. However, there's 3 things/occasions that stands out for being the strangest, and my class stood for all of them: salt, food, and interaction with other classes/grades. I had a horrible home ed teacher who intended to starve a kid. I called him Bob for a minor issue. Now, Bob wasn't well liked by many teachers, and he's the reason for the ban of salt. Bob was a troublemaker. He was good at creating gangs, even if he didn't know people. He just had something. In 6th grade he made a small gang and distributed bread amongst the kids in 3rd grade. However, he had loaded them with salt, pretty much inedible. He would bully the kids to eat it. It was when a kid threw up not long after, and another kid had major stomach pains from it, that the teacher caught up with it. It was made so that salt had to be distributed by our teacher, who didn't like kids at all. It was locked in a cupboard when not in use. Food. The food ban is in relation to the salt ban. We were allowed to bring food to school in our lunch boxes and whatnot. We just couldn't take them anywhere else than the classroom. Or, if we were in home ed, we had to have our lunch break in the room too. Eating in the hallways and outside got banned for the entire school. Interaction with other classes/grades. When I was in 6th grade, and all of the above went down, the principal made it a rule that we was not allowed to interact with other grades than our own and the parallel classes. That meant that I was in 6-pointer, and I was only allowed to interact with my classmates in 6-pointer and the kids from 6.B. This was the rule for the entire school, and it was 2 whole years before it was revoked, which was only because of angry parents. Apparently a lot of kids had friends in other grades than their own, and the parents didn't wanna hear their kids cry about it any longer. Bonus fact: Furbies got banned for 3 years. If a Furby was spotted, you'd never see it again. Disagreement point: in my senior year in high school, there was a worse than usual problem with fighting at my school and various other ones in the town. A few months into the year, something mildly serious every couple of days, rather than the standard once a month or so type of thing. The place was tense for a while. After one incident, the principal, this cantankerous walking power trip of a man who used his doctorate as a cudgel against staff and students alike, blew up at the whole student body over the PA. Ranted for a while about how enough is enough. He wouldn't tolerate any more fighting. Well, fair enough, but also wouldn't tolerate even things that potentially could lead to fighting, roughhousing, physical contact of any type, insults, or the point where he inspired a 1,350 person double take. Disagreements of any kind over any subject. Differences of opinion were violent, you see, and it had to stop. Later that day during lunch break, a couple friends decided to try to poke the issue. They got together within earshot of the principal's office, a crowded part of the building during breaks, and started having a calmly worded, rational, respectful discussion about a book they had both been reading. The words and body language were utterly civil and polite, but they made a point of delivering them in the most belligerent tone of voice possible. Well, okay, I can see where you're coming from, but I'm not entirely convinced. Doesn't that strike you as a narrow reading of that chapter? On its own, maybe, but come on, we are talking a theme that runs through half the guy's books. Went on for a few minutes with several dozen witnesses, including some smirking teachers who could tell exactly what was going on, and then they went their separate ways, not a peep about it, or the policy in general from the principal afterwards. It was a somewhat glorious day, though I suppose some would, and could, disagree. The official class of 2013 shirts. My HS is named after our town, so our varsity letter is at either class of 13 shirts, said Jet in the diploma, except that E was a huge varsity letter and diploma was real small. The students loved the shirts and bought them in record numbers. Even underclassmen and parents bought them. They were all already purchased and distributed before administration figured out what that meant, so no one was allowed to wear them at school events. Also, while leggings, yoga pants, and jeans were all allowed, jeggings were not. The year before I got there, the ban on tissues was lifted, and it's still against the rules to have cards of any kind, thanks to the class of '02 who started a poker tournament complete with bookies. At my fiance's old school, they can't have graduation ceremonies at the only local venue big enough to comfortably fit everyone, because of something the class of 2012 did. I have no idea, but the venue banned the school. Also, starting the year after she graduated, the principal banned field trips, because I'm just uncomfortable with the idea of teachers outside the classroom. Oh, and how could I forget? No outside of school communication between teachers and students is allowed. That includes social media of any kind. That's because one year, a teacher got caught faking his students, but no charges were pressed, so he wasn't fired. Also, there's an unenforced rule that says, if you park in a space not registered to you, yours gets towed. My freshman year, one of my senior friends rolled into first hour late. This was unusual, so I asked him about it, and he said that he had to stop into the office to clear up something about his car. Rather than pay for a parking space, he had been parking in the staff lot since his freshman year and just now got caught. It was March. He faced no consequences. Even more edit, spelling. I don't believe many will read this tale, but let me tell you a story about snowball fights here in the north. It snows about 4 to 5 months every year. Or at least it used to snow when I was in elementary school some 20 years ago. And with the snow came the war. In my school we were allowed to have friendly snowball fights on a gravel football field, which was close by the teacher's parking spot. Not a smart move, by letting the kids throw snow at each other, so close to cars, but that's how it was. Also, the first, second, and third graders were not allowed to fight. They were too young for war, but the fourth, fifth, and sixth graders were allowed to point. This year me and my friends were fourth graders, so we were in the big leagues. We quickly became aware of that when some of the oldest kids pinned us down and started to shove snow in our faces. A move we call miler in my part of the country. It was their way to show the difference between ages and also to make us fear them. This was normal in the early 90s, older kids bullying younger ones. Me and my friends could take it, since most us had older siblings, but when the 6th graders started to mix ice in their snowballs we drew the line. We were furious and it all went from a friendly snowball fight to an all-out war between kids. All the snowballs got rolled with ice, some even got a bit of gravel in them. If a 6th grader managed to pin someone down we quickly jumped him and kicked snow in his face. We got punched, we were thrown around, but we never gave up. Some kids started to bleed, and the gravel cut them close to their eyes. Some started to cry. Others ran away and tried to hide between the teachers' cars, which led to some chipped windows and car paint. The teachers went mad and stopped us from fighting each other. When they heard our cries of battle point, everything settled down and we were led to our classrooms. Everyone had to listen to their respective teacher talk about what had happened during the recess and why it was bad. They also told us that our kids' version of Battle of the Bastards was no more. The little plot of land we had was now a demilitarized zone and all kind of snowball fighting was banned from school points. So in the first snowy recess of the year we managed to get snowball fights banned, and our dream of becoming the 6th graders in future battles was thwarted then and there. Pokemon cards, almost specifically because of me. The children at my elementary school had invented the most intricate and beautiful system for leveling up their Pokemon cards. I didn't know the system because I was an outsider and didn't have any of my own, so I couldn't play with them. They would learn new techniques, permanently evolve, upgrade their damage and HP, all sorts of things, because not a single one of the players had read the proper rules. As children do, they invented their own, which were much more clever. My uncle gave me my first starter pack of Pokemon cards and I instantly learned the rules and introduced them to the kids at my school, excited to finally be able to participate, and not only that, but also enlighten kids who had been clearly grasping for truth and inventing pleasant lies to fill the gaps in their knowledge. They abandoned the new way and embraced the old, not understanding, in their naivete, what was lost. The game became accessible. I opened the doors. I made it easy. Everyone could play, finally, so everyone did. It was almost immediately banned. It became too popular to hide. I destroyed something beautiful. Then my family moved, so I not only never had to suffer the repercussions, but also I've now filled in what's actually a pretty hazy memory with something dramatic. Golf balls. This was elementary school, 4th grade to be particular, and I'm in college now, so details are beginning to get fuzzy. There are certain things that I don't know anymore. I don't know why I had a golf ball. I don't know why everyone else had golf balls. I don't know why I stuffed said golf ball into a red plastic clown nose and drew a face on it. I certainly don't know why this caught on. But it did catch on, quickly and viciously, as if golf balls possessed the uncanny ability to multiply while unseen in an open front desk, until every student had one. Most had two. Several had 3. One rich girl had 7. Within a week, golf ball fashion had developed to the point that the mere illustration of a face in Sharpie was no longer enough. Multiple colors were demanded. In some cases, glitter was used. At the height of it all, people brought in doll clothing to dress their golf balls in. There were golf ball families, golf ball romances, golf ball rivalries. As Sharpie was insufficiently indelible for long-term use on the sleek surface of a golf ball, it was all too easy to steal someone else's golf ball, wipe off their work, and remark it as your own. We were descending into golf ball anarchy. Teachers were begging us to stop bringing golf balls to class, as their voices were covered up by the cacophony of golf balls rolling around the steel book boxes, but we were reluctant to listen. The last day of the golf ball dawned. My best friend, Valerie, snuck her newest golf ball into math class. It had long brown Sharpie hair and large round eyes framed with Sharpie eyelashes. A veritable ball fatale. There are certain things I will remember until the day I die, and one of them is this: the way that golf ball slipped out of the grip of Valerie's fingers until it was free rolling round the book box. Each metallic clunk, a foreboding countdown, hit the floor and rolled directly under Mr. Klein's unassuming foot as he passed back last week's math tests. I got Yu-Gi-Oh cards, actually all trading cards, so Pokemon and Magic to Ike. Banned from my middle school. My stepdad had bought Mount a bunch of the tons of cards for my birthday, and I had a lot of neat rare foil cards. Red Eyes Black Metal Dragon, Jaia the Dragon Knight, ECT, and I brought them to show my buddies at school one day. I was an excitable child and wanted to share that I had these awesome cards, even if I didn't have a deck that could use them. Well, a bunch of bullies. Last set I ever dealt with, thank goodness. Still a bunch, because girls can't play with the cool kid stuff. But I didn't realize this until after lunch was over, that half my cards were missing, and one of the boys told me what I quoted above. He also said he had taken them. Cue a 3-week battle in the principal's office with my dad, the kid, his parents, and me all getting really upset at one another. The kid had told me he had taken them, but of course was now denying it. It wasn't until a teacher, I think, weaseled out of the other kids in that group that they had, in fact, thrown away all those cards, and then blamed the one kid, who stupidly said he had done it, probably to make me think he was a badass, who knows. Right after this, the principal banned all cards from school grounds. It was a nightmare, and I'm a bit irritated. Jaia was worth like $300 at one point, and I had 3 of him, whenever I think on it. But stupid kids are stupid kids, and bullies are just that. Lesson learned back then: don't trust anyone near your stuff. Let's see. High school. Hugging in the hallway. Yelling at any sporting event in the student section. The words bussy and /cork. Salt, which created a large inter-school black market for tiny salt packets. Ketchup after everyone started putting ketchup on everything. Using CNN as a source for anything. Grade school. Sports. Baseball, football, soccer, basketball until I was in 7th grade. Running puking by yourself after a kid got in trouble for jacking off for 20 minutes. Balloons. This was awesome, because for field day most of the girls were wearing t-shirts, because it's hot out. A few guys, including myself, filled one of those storage tubs full of water balloons and carry it outside and hide it in the bushes by the volleyball court. An hour later the class gets to play and all the guys run and grab balloons and proceed to soak the girls. It was awesome, because it was the last day and they really couldn't do anything to punish us. Being 13 and seeing booze was the best thing any 13-year-old could ask for. Starting with the TLDR, My senior class caused a lockdown and a no water gun in town rule for a few hours, and a ban on an annual senior game point. When I was a high school senior in 2002, my entire area had a senior game called either Assassins or Water Wars depending on the school you went to. Point the game was you and a friend secretly are assigned to assassinate another team by squirting them with water. Usually a water gun, while another team is secretly assigned to get you. You get new assignments after every hit until the last team is left standing, who wins the entry fee each team paid. Everyone paid $10. The jackpot was $500. There were rules. No playing at school grounds at all. School wasn't involved, and we didn't want trouble. You can't go into someone's house, yard or workplace without their permission, and nothing that could hurt. Super soakers and water balloons were the most powerful allowed. It was supposed to be pure fun, not malicious in any way, and it was fun until one team decided to do a stakeout for their target. There's only one entrance from a one-lane road into the school. Traffic every morning is pretty bad, so there's a lot of standing still. One team decided to dress in camouflage, put on army face paint marks on their face, and hide behind bushes along the road with bright pink super soaker guns for their target. FYI, she would have loved it, and said so later. They decided to hide behind bushes in a yard owned by a woman who saw them and thought they were terrorists. Terrorists with pink super soakers. I should mention this was the spring after 9/11. I arrived at school 1.5 hours later. I got to sleep in due to senior privilege and no classes those periods. To find the school was totally locked down. When I knocked on the door, I was greeted by a cop who had his hand on his gun and demanded I go to the auditorium. The principal and the town police held an assembly for the senior class and demanded we give them the prize money and that any kid in town playing with water guns would be arrested on the spot. The senior class collectively told them to fuck off. They weren't getting a dime, and the water gun rule was never adhered to or enforced. The class even had a massive water gun fight at the local park within a week. The team who caused the lockdown were expelled and weren't supposed to graduate, but were allowed back within 2 days. When the school was threatened with lawsuits, the principal and faculty were basically forced by circumstance to go to our graduation, but they really wanted nothing to do with us ever since the incident. TLDR. Kids threw a Webkinz in a light fixture and broke it, setting off the alarm, getting Webkinz banned. Everyone had to stand in a blizzard. Also lost my pizza. Rip. Webkinz. In 4th grade all the girls were obsessed with Webkinz stuffed animals. They used to all bring in their Webkinz into school and have parties with them at break time. They used to have games and do all sorts of stuff. Anyway, one day I was in 3rd grade enjoying my nice slice of pizza in the cafe when all of a sudden the fire alarm goes off. Now when the fire alarm goes off, you get the hell out of the school and you have no time to wait. It's also like the coldest day of the year and snowing, and my 2 jackets are across the school, so I have a t-shirt and jeans on. So after standing in the cold for faking like 25 minutes, the fire department shows up to determine it is a false alarm, minor accident, and leave. We all go back inside and it is done with. So what happened? Well, I lost my pizza that day cause the alarm scared me so bad I dropped it, but that's besides the point. Days later every class has a talking to about Webkinz from their teachers, and there is now an official rule saying no Webkinz. A 4th grader had been playing with their Webkinz singing a nursery rhythm, and then at the end they all threw their animals in the air. One girl really put her arm into and threw it so hard it smashed a light fixture and it started smoking, which travels through the room tripping the alarm. This story is especially dumb because we could have just thrown a stupid textbook at the light and got textbooks banned. Even worse is you could still bring in stuffed animals, just not Webkinz. TLDR. School administrators are complete overreactive idiots. I went to middle school in a ridiculously Christian suburb in Texas full of sheltered, helicopter parented kids, so you can only imagine how far off the deep end the school administrators were willing to go. But here's a short list of things that were banned and short explanations why. Ozfest 2002 2040 shirts, Iron Maiden t-shirts, Tenacious D t-shirts, etc. Because they, I kid you not, depicted satanic demons. If only we as a bunch of 13-year-olds had the stones to demonstrate against free speech violations. UGIO cards because apparently a community of religious zealots couldn't teach its kids to not steal from one another and lie about it, and we had quite a few fights break out because of that. The community however had no problem telling us that abstinence was the way to go. Soaps, those shoes that you could grind on rails with, because some moron decided to try it on a very high stairwell and had to get stitches in his head, studded punk belts, dog collars, and any other hot topic jewelry/accessories. Our school kind of had a bullying problem, and a goth kid decided he had had enough of the daily homophobic bullying gay bashing and whipped the bully in the face with his studded belt to defend himself in the locker room after PE. The bully's parents raised hell, and then we couldn't wear that kind of stuff anymore. Worst twist, rather than have any serious conversation about the wrongs of bullying, the principal sent the goth kid to alternative schooling for juvenile delinquents, while the bully just got suspended for a week. Aluminum cans, because kids would flick the soda tabs at other students and a teacher got hit in the face. Since the soda ban didn't last long, it was eventually revised to a before and after school policy only, and the dumbest of all, speaking languages other than English in class. Halfway through middle school, we had an influx of Cantonese, Vietnamese, and Pakistani kids at our school, since the zoning lines were drawn. Apparently some white parents weren't comfortable because they thought those kids would collude with each other against the white kids and raised hell to the principal. Needless to say, it didn't last long, because quite a few of the new Cantonese, Vietnamese, and Pakistani kids couldn't speak English, not to mention understand what they could/couldn't do in US schools. Since a majority of the Cantonese, Vietnamese, and Pakistani kids already attending my middle school were bilingual, they were an absolute necessity for the teachers. Most hilarious twist, those kids, contrary to the racist parents' thoughts, tried to learn English and assimilate into American culture anyways. Definitely late to the party, but oh well, Pokemon cards, and here's why. It was the dreary days of grade school, preschool to 5th grade, and Pokemon mania hit our small town hard. Kids of various ages would be trading Pokemon cards to pass time either on the bus to school or off the bus, when each class would be put into lines in the school gym to await the start of class. These perfect lines would become muddled over time as kids would get up and converse or trade with other kids about Pokemon cards. All the while we traded Pokemon cards, we were slowly understanding the art of the deal and other tactics to slowly increase our card collection point. It would start like this. Me and my friends would bring only the cards to school we would not mind losing or trading. Geodude with the bent edges, the 7 identical Caterpies, that one Diglett with a nasty sheet, cake to the back of it extension. All Pokemon cards I could give less of a shit about, but am stuck with. We then broke free from our lines to trade with other kids, and it always started off the same way. What will you give me for this? The art of the deal is to trade up what you have in any way possible, so you can come home with something better than what you had before. For example, that Geodude with the bent corners? That card became a trainer card and a few energy cards. Then those were traded for some nicer cards, and nicer cards, until you have something you don't want to trade. Eventually people more greedy than I would start trading with the 1st and 2nd graders, and coercing them into giving away a lot more than the card they were trading was worth. Faculty caught wind of this, and subsequently banned the purchase, sale, and trade of any trading cards, while school is in session. Fetching. Some kids had their parents send notes to school from doctors saying they had to be allowed to fetch. As far as I know, that rule was just eventually ignored. Duct tape was also banned, supposedly because kids were smoking it. Upon hearing of this, shitty high school friends and I decided we would try that. It didn't really work out. Axe body spray got a ban at some point. Some kid sprayed an entire can in my history class and the teacher refused to let us out of the room. It was hard to breathe. Short shorts. The principal made the announcement and referred to them as trying to stuff 10 pounds of ham in a 2-pound bag. Not technically in the school itself, but my bus driver tried to ban the phrase big boy, to which some kid immediately yelled big boy. She turned the bus around and tried to take us back to the school, then stopped the bus to scream at us. Some kid opened the fire hatch at the back and me and like 3 others left. I found out later she held all the kids there for hours. They started rocking the bus from the inside. Kids called their parents, but she wouldn't let them go, and eventually the police got involved before the kids got out of there. I never did find out what happened to her, but she wasn't my route's driver anymore and there was an extra supervisor the rest of the year. I say my route, and not my bus, because I got a ticket for improper use of a fire exit, and was banned from the bus for the rest of the year at high school. Fraternities and sororities which weren't the honors. One point a kid in one of the frats got hazed. Real bad. All weekend. And then he disappeared in the middle of packing up his stuff. Like, went missing and not answering his phone and he's not on campus, or at home with mom. Disappeared. Point I forget if he was going to report the hazing, or in the middle of reporting the hazing, or what, but posters went up. Campus-wide emails were issued. People were questioned. Sporadic searches happened here and there. Some random guy out on a stroll or smoke break, or whatever found the body in the creek that meanders through the center of town. Dead. Point I forget if it was suicide or murder or accidental, but the frat he was a part of got the big sheet big time. Ike, their national level hung them out to dry. The school specifically kicked their specific frat out of town, and the students had at least academic boiling hot oil poured their way. I don't know if anything resulted with the police. The school ran an inquest panel investigation into frat and sorority life on campus in general. It concluded no bueno, and issued new policy to the effect of no more Greek recruitment. Once everyone currently in the Greek system graduates, Greek life is done for this school. Point the school kept the honors Greek as bueno, pretty much just because, or for obvious reasons. Here's just a couple I can think of off the top of my head. Point elementary school, limits on purchase at the snack shack and vending machines. Not really a ban per se, but we weren't able to purchase more than 2 items of an item at a time. I would run my fat ass, was a fat little kid, one of my nicknames was Raleigh Polly, to the snack shack. Let the first couple kids cut me in line, until I found the hot item of the day and proceed to buy the item out. I would then stand next to the snack shack like a drug dealer, and wait for people to ask for said item, only to be told they were sold out. I'd proceed to sell them for twice the price. Continued this until I bought just about every item that was in stock every week, and made lots of profit. Once they banged me from doing this, I then moved on to the vending machines, and took a backpack full of ice packs and dry ice, and bought out all the best flavors of things and doubled the price. We only had one soda machine at the time. Junior high, paper hornets, see image. There was a big war between everyone for about a solid week or two. I came to school prepared with a gallon Ziploc full of them, and another full of rubber band glow sticks. Me and a friend would go to the dollar store and purchase all of their glow sticks. We'd get a pack of 3 small ones with one mouth guard and a big one for $1 each pack. We would then go to the student dances and sell each small one for $2 and a big one for $4 each. Lots of profit was made until everyone started chewing on the little ones and complaining about them busting everywhere. Point Legos. I made a contraption or two out of Legos to launch projectiles. Consisted of a couple springs and rubber bands, but was primarily Legos high school. Walking on the grass. Yup, you read that right. We got grass installed throughout the main outside corridor, and I was the first one to get a referral for 5 days on campus for walking on the grass. No one else in the group of like 10 people I was walking with got called over by first name by the principal. Point clay. We would confiscate big chunks of clay from the pottery classes and would flick balls of clay at people and things. After there were random balls of clay stuck all over the walls, ceiling tiles, windows, etc. Point they threatened anyone taking clay to be expelled. Well, we pitched in and ordered clay off the interwebs and still proceeded with our fun until they banned it. Point loaning money. I would loan out money to fellow students and have them and a witness sign a document stating how much they would pay me back. Generally charge $1 for anything $5 and under, $3 for $15 and under, and about $5 for $20. The prices from there would vary. I would also charge daily interest, if not paid back within 2 days, which was generally the same fee. Point collecting donations. Me and a friend had an art class before lunch, and would build a new donation box each day. Would then go around asking everyone for $1, or would perform stunts for a donation. They generally consisted of things like running up the wall, and doing a backflip, scaling a building, and so forth. That's all I can really think of right now, while I wait to leave my college for the day. If I think of anything more I'll edit this post. students may not run a business or business-like entity on school grounds without the express written permission of the dean. Unfortunately, this rule was my fault. The school was very strict about stationery requirements. Certain subjects, for example, required a HB and a 6H pencil for every lesson. Some classes required only black pens. Different classes even required very specific types of exercise books. As the school was a boarding school, it had an on-site stationery store, but it was double the retail price outside the school. I had the freedom to leave school grounds as I was one of the few day students. I started stocking up in bulk stationery supplies from local retailers and selling out of my locker with a 20% markup, seriously undercutting the school's stationery store. News about the business spread quickly. I had accounts for regular customers and spent most of my lunch times dealing out of my locker. I ended up leasing part of a locker off another student to store more stock. I was able to turn a tidy profit for 6 months or so before the school worked out that the profits of their store were severely down. There was a manhunt and a few teachers who knew about e-business quickly ratted me out. I didn't get in trouble, but I was politely asked to cease trading, and the next year the rule above was added to the school's official rule publication. Improbably too late, but in middle school I swear to God for like 2 months we weren't allowed to touch anybody. I mean that every single student supposedly was supposed to go about their day without making physical contact with any other student whatsoever. In reality there was only 3 or 4 faculty members that actually enforced this. None of the actual teachers cared. But the guy who made the rule, who was some counselor, he was the one who was absolutely all about this. In the lunch line every day he would monitor us to make sure that no one skips and that we do it fast. I know, stupid, right? So this is when we would fuck with this guy. He yelled at us to not touch anybody, so we were all standing in line very awkwardly, not trying to get in trouble at first, but then 2 kids just blatantly give each other a high five in front of him, and this counselor seriously gets mad and sends them to the principal's office. So of course my jackass grade of middle schoolers starts hysterically laughing, and then so many people are high-fiving everywhere. There's hugs going on. I swear people were standing right in front of the counselor and just poking each other very softly. People were getting sent to the principal's office left and right, me included. But her office was full, so there was nothing she could do. She made a very general message to all of us and told us to get lunch. So for the rest of the 2 months we practically did the same thing every day when we saw that counselor. In my high school at the beginning of my junior year they banned backpacks because you could have a weapon in them, although you could still use drawstring bags. As you would assume, everybody hated this rule with an ungodly passion. Like, what if you could still carry a weapon in a drawstring bag? And you could have big bulky bags as long as it used drawstrings to close it. I saw one guy with a backpack that had normal straps, but it just had strings to pull it shut instead of a zipper, and that was okay. Mind you, this school had 1500 students, so it was huge. If you wanted your textbook for class you had to go all the way across the school, which was easily a 4 to 5 minute trip. Now imagine if you had 3 classes right next to each other, but your locker was on the exact other side of the school. You would have to go back and forth all day long because you can't put them in your backpack. Backpacks were banned, and passing time was cut from 6 minutes to 5 minutes that year. Kids would consistently ignore the rule and bring their backpack full of all their textbooks to class and be told they have to put it in their locker, and then they would be gone for 10 minutes. Like, is it really that big of a deal if I have all of my school stuff with me? Then the other half of the time kids would come to class with nothing because they didn't have time to go to their locker, and then they do have to go during class, and it would take 10 minutes and they come back and be like, gee, I sure wish I could just put all this in a bag and carry it around. Also, we had no mustard at that school. It was faking terrible. Edit. Also, all the parents were pissed considering it happened about a week after school started, right after all the parents bought brand new backpacks and they weren't even allowed to use them. During high school, for about half a year, cell phones were banned during class hours. Every morning, every person that brought a phone would have to put their gadgets in a box, and then by the end of class hours, they would return them to you. I never completely understood why, or if it was an effective approach at all, but it was in connection to an orgy footage involving students and it went viral, not online, and a lot of students obtained copies of the said footage. They never got to the bottom of who disseminated it in the first place, but the ones who were in the video, 6 of them, were suspended for a month. These events happened in 2008/2009. 2 of them went on to become engineers, 1 pushed a degree in physical therapy, another just graduated from political science and heading towards law, and 2 more who eventually got engaged to each other, and they're opening up a restaurant in a few weeks. Plot twist, I, however, was the one that made that sheet go viral. I snuck a copy from the future lawyer's phone, passed it on to friends and swore to stay mum, and before I knew it, it got bonkers. I stopped bringing my phone almost immediately, saying it fell from the upstairs balcony as an excuse. I never got a day of suspension, but my academic history was so bad I had to take an extra semester at some other crummy high school. I was the only person excluded from graduation rites due to numerous flunks. Later in life, I would be known as the only student of class of 2011 and one half. I have no regrets either. Those were fun and interesting times. I eventually had some use for my penchant for trouble and interest with odd videos, as I'm down to the last few legs of finishing my film degree. Everybody wins. Zip ties. Let me tell you, we turned that sheet into a sport. We would zip tie our friends' backpacks shut without them noticing, and have a good laugh about it. It was pretty innocent at first. Then we started zip tying belt loops to seats if the person fell asleep. Then it got a little out of hand due to someone going to Lowe's and discovering industrial zip ties, the huge ones. At own time someone zip-tied a set of doors shut and the school cracked down on it because that was a fire safety hazard and banned zip-ties. It doesn't end there though. One day at lunch I had a few friends who were over the top and decided it would be funny to turn a kid's book bag inside out with his belongings inside and then use metal zip ties on it. If that wasn't enough they decided superglue would do the trick. The next day we get there before school starts, and we are standing in the courtyard waiting for class to be called, and the principal approaches me and 2 other friends in the group and tells us to go to his office along with another friend who met us there shortly after. Apparently they had video evidence of all 4 of us attacking the book bag. Now, me and one of the 4 guys were not around for it. It was spicy chicken sandwich day and we were not going to pass it up. After explaining that we were nowhere near the incident and asked to see the video evidence, that wanted to say we were lying and that the video was confidential. The other 2 guys were absolutely guilty and ended up getting Saturday work detail, and me and the other guy had to write a 2-page essay on what would you have done to intervene if you were around for it. This was way better than getting hit with expulsion, which was thrown at us as soon as we sat down in the office. TLDR, zip ties. Some friends of mine took it too far. I'm currently in high school and this is the full, unbiased story of how saying each other's names was banned. This all starts with the idea that you could call out your friend's name from across the hallway, act like it wasn't you, and send that person looking around in circles for who called them. It was stupid, but we had nothing else to do. This is called hunting. Hunting became an instant hit. If even got to the point where a policeman would drive around town and hunt people who were walking down the street. People would hunt teachers, some of which would hunt them back. Then one child, James, couldn't take the joke. He would lose his mind whenever people hunted him. The students calling his name would think that this was hilarious and continue to do this. Eventually, he started threatening to fight anyone whom he thought was calling his name. James then left the school for homeschool. He then sued about half a dozen of his peers for bullying. The amount of money he wanted for repetitions was $500,000 from each student. Naturally, the judge threw the case away. Anyways, the principal sent out an email banning the practice, and now anyone who calls anyone's name loudly gets a talking to. There has been one 3-day suspension for one child that broke the rule. PS. Graduation was really funny when they called out James' name for him to receive his diploma. TLDR. What started out as a stupid way for teenagers to have fun ended with a student suing for a total of $3 million and the practice being banned. Several years ago my son's principal called me to come to the school. He was in 1st grade, So I was confused about why I needed to come to the school, since they said he wasn't hurt or in trouble. I get up there, walk in, and the principal said I had to take him and get his hair cut because it was inappropriate. He had a mohawk about 1/2 an inch high and an inch wide. The principal said he couldn't come back until it was gone and he had a normal haircut. I picked him up every day and had seen several other kids with the same haircut. I told the principal that this was wholly unacceptable. When he asked why I told him to come with me, I walked down the hallway and pointed out 5 kids with the exact same haircut. He didn't like my son because he has ADHD and is extremely active and gets really excited. He was looking for a way to get him out of the school because he didn't want to deal with him. It was a private Catholic school, so he could find reasons to throw kids out. We walked back to his office and I had my son sit outside while I talked to the principal. We had an extremely intense come to Jesus meeting for the next 10 minutes. I basically threatened him for those 10 minutes. I told him that he was going to leave my son alone, and if he ever called me again over some bullshit like that, I was going to shove him so far up a priest's as he would be the one giving the homily at mass. If he and the teachers couldn't handle a child with ADHD, they had no goddamn business being educators. I said all of that standing up, leaning over his desk, and jamming my finger into the desk for emphasis. The school never called us for any problems again after that. I took him out after 3rd grade and put him in a public school. He's much happier and doing much better in school. They have programs for kids like him, and the teachers know how to handle them. He makes the all-ab honor roll almost every semester and enjoys going to school. Jigger pets, because people were playing with them instead of paying attention in class. Well then, make the lessons more interesting. But my school also banned jewelry because the other students might want it and be jealous, and nail polish. It was a Catholic school. Also, wheeled backpacks. Apparently, people dragging their bags on the floor clogged hallway traffic. Nope, it was much better to lug around 25 to 30 pounds of books on our backs in the 5th grade. We had no lockers and we weren't allowed to go back to homeroom to get /switch textbooks. That's a heavy load for a 5th grader to carry, even if only short distances. And we weren't allowed to take off our ties or sweater vests even in the summertime, and it was like 85 degrees in the building. That was grade school. High school, short shorts, tube tops, above the knee skirts, tank tops and two-piece swimsuits in gym class were banned. Also, my leather jewelry was banned because it was considered a weapon, but the rule only applied to me. I wore chokers for 3 fucking years without a problem. I told that ASLICA principal to show me where in the student handbook there was any rule vaguely resembling jewelry equals weapon, and he just said he'd suspend me if I wore it again as whole. I hope he dies slowly and painfully in front of his children. Also, public displays of affection. Special rules made just for me too. Apparently, standing beside someone of the opposite sex counted as PDA, but the student's sucking face in the stairwells never got in trouble. I really don't know why the principal had it out for me so bad. My theory is that I dressed like a troublemaker, but I was actually a good student. Had almost all my teachers tell me I belonged in honors classes. I don't think he liked that I didn't look or behave like a good student, so he wanted to punish me for not being a good representative of the school. Hats. I know it's normal to not be able to wear hats in class, but they were really strict. So much that even if you were wearing it before school started at 7:45 am and ended at 2:15 am. At 7:30 am walking to class, to get there before the bell rang, they would snatch the hat off your head and keep it till the end of the school year. Same with after school. If you refused to give them your hat, you got suspended for 2 days. Also, they were ridiculous with cell phones. If you got caught on your cell phone even during lunch, or in the halls between class, or going to bathroom, they would take your phone till the end of the day, and depending on how many times you've been caught decided your penalty. First time equals teacher took phone and gave it to the office till end of day, where your parent had to come get it. They would not return your phone without a parent coming to get it. Second time equals teacher took phone and gave it to office and your parent had to come get it again, and you also got a week of lunch detention or 2 days after school detention. Third time and onward equals teacher took phone and gave it to office. Your parent had to come and get it. You got a 2 to 3 day outside school suspension, kicked off all sports teams, and every time you returned from suspension your parents had to come in before school the day you could come back to school and have a meeting with you and the principal. Quick notes, you couldn't return to school without a parent meeting with principal, so if your parent or parents had work before 7 AM they had to take off work and you couldn't return to school till they met. Also, we had a rule at my school where we had 4 quarters per school year. If you missed 9 or more days of school per quarter you automatically got an E in every class for that quarter and failed that quarter. Days you're suspended count towards your total allowed absence days. Primary school hats, caps, any sort of headwear, God knows why, point gamma boy link cable, not the games or the handheld, just the cable. If you yanked the cable out mid-trade on Pokemon the trade was cancelled and you both got a copy. If you yanked it out at the wrong time, only one person got the trade complete and kept both Pokemon. Some kids found out just when to yank it to keep both. Pogs. Some kid went through the whole school during lunchtime stealing pogs from the kids' bags/drawers/coats Pokemon cards. Quite a few got stolen. UGIO were fine point ping pong balls. Some 9-year-old girl decided to show off a trick she learned from one of her dad's movies. High school gel pens. The normal kind were fine, but the scented ones were banned along with the glitter ones. Laptops/USB sticks kids were bringing inborn and copying it to the school server's gloves. Kids placed pennies/2 pence coins in the fingers of the gloves and used them as makeshift knuckle dusters. Car aerials. Kids were taking them off the cars on their way to school and wiping people across the side of the head, and one kid lost his ear due to the damage. Pixie sticks. A lad found out he was diabetic thanks to them/or just forced it upon himself. He snorted about 200 a day. Fall offs ML addresses. If you got found sharing your ML you got a 3-day suspension. Some girl got hate mail from some other girls and she killed herself.